Chapter 133. Allowing your horse to disturb the people is just a warning. Ning Chen's expression was terrifyingly cold. The life scroll around him began to circulate on its own. Cold currents surged out, releasing boundless killing intent. "Yin Wugo, thanks department head for your tolerance," said Yin Wugo calmly as he wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth. Yin Wugo's expression was indifferent. There wasn't the slightest anger in his calm eyes. It was as if nothing else mattered. "We've risked our lives for the dynasty, but this new department head is actually punishing me over such a small matter. He's really making a mountain out of a molehill." Outside the hall, 12 red-robed guards had gathered at the entrance. A rather handsome youth refused to accept this. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clearly transmitted into the hall. The 6 of them were startled, and Yin Wugo's expression changed slightly. He wanted to stop him, but it was too late. A white figure flashed and appeared in front of the youth. Under his shocked gaze, a sword pointed at him. With a bang, he flew back, blood spraying everywhere. "I don't want to hear such words a second time," said Ning Chen coldly as he looked at the youth. "You!" The youth's face turned red. He was about to explode when a blood sword appeared in front of him. "Yin Wugo, thanks department head on behalf of Kong Yu for not killing me." "Wugo, you." Kong Yu was startled and furious. He looked at Yin Wugo. "If you don't want to die, shut up." Yin Wugo coldly swept his gaze over him. Kong Yu's body trembled. His expression changed again and again. In the end, he clenched his teeth and swallowed his words. Ning Chen nodded in satisfaction. He coldly swept his gaze over everyone present. "If you're not convinced, you can come find me at any time. But next time, I won't be so kind." The 6 people inside the hall and the 12 red-robed guards lowered their heads. No matter what they were thinking, they temporarily restrained their sharpness. Ning Chen turned and walked towards the main seat. He wasn't stupid enough to think that everyone present had already changed their minds. They were all people who had lived for so long. Loyalty was nothing to them. Only life, death, and profit were the most important. "Yin Wugo, stay behind. The rest of you, leave." "Yes." Together with Kong Yu, the 12 red-clothed blood guards bowed and left. "Yan Zishu, give me all the records of Ing City's city lord. I want to know what you should do." Ning Chen's eyes narrowed as he stared at the scholar below. Hearing the warning in the former's words, Yan Zishu felt a chill run down his spine, and cold sweat unconsciously flowed down his back. "This subordinate obeys," Yan Zishu bowed and replied. He then stood up and clapped his hands 3 times, and a blue-clothed attendant slowly walked into the hall. "Bring me the golden book on the 9th floor of the 4th row on the left of the Hidden Secrets Pavilion." "Yes." "Yan Zishu, who else touched this golden book before this?" Ning Chen asked. Yan Zishu hesitated for a moment before saying, reporting to the department head, "Duke Shiyu personally came 3 days ago." "Duke Shiyu." Ning Chen's eyes flashed. It was actually him. Although it was unexpected, it was within reason. Among the people he feared the most in Grand Xia, Duke Shiyu was definitely one of them. As the head of the Grand Xia's eunuchs, his status was even higher than that of a martial marquis. Furthermore, the martial prowess of each of the 3 dukes was unfathomable, and Duke Shiyu was no exception. For the past 2 days, he had been unable to figure out why Zhang Sun had appointed him as the head of the Hidden Secrets Pavilion. Now, it seemed that Zhang Sun had begun to suspect whether the 3 dukes were still as loyal to Grand Xia as before. The human heart is truly unpredictable. Ning Chen's heart trembled. The struggle between the 2 princes was already chaotic enough. If the 3 dukes were still not content, Grand Xia would be in deep trouble. The Golden Book recorded all the information of Ing City's city lord. Other than managing the world's prisons, the Hidden Secrets Pavilion was also responsible for investigating the actions of the nobles. In the words of the future, it was a secret service. Now that he had achieved his goal, Ning Chen did not stay any longer. He glanced at the red-clothed man beside him and said, "In Wugo, come with me to the Divine Wind Camp to pay a visit to our third prince." Yes. Ning Chen left the Hidden Secrets Pavilion, followed by In Wugo. Only Yan Zishu, Zhao Ji, and the others were left standing in the pavilion, staring at each other. For a moment, they were unable to react. This new head of the Hidden Secrets Pavilion had come suddenly and left even more suddenly. His actions and mentality were unfathomable. It seemed that working under him in the future would not be easy. The two of them headed east. Their clothes were as white as snow, and their clothes were as red as blood. One in front of the other, they silently advanced. The two of them, who were so close to each other, had different thoughts and different experiences, resulting in completely different lives. Who could say what they had to endure and bear? In Wugo, do you know why I chose you? Because the Hidden Secrets Pavilion Master needs a dog that can bite people. Ha! Ning Chen laughed. He did not explain, nor did he deny it. However, what he needed was not a dog, but a sharp sword. As long as I am here, your past will become the past. I will give you a completely different life, a life where you can make your own decisions. Ning Chen did not stop. His back was to In Wugo. He seemed casual, but also incomparably serious. The Hidden Secrets Pavilion's 6 colored guards were all experts who had been cleansed from a young age and then raised through special methods. They had no status, no light, and had to live their entire lives in blood. He had also entered the palace, so he could see more clearly than anyone else that the Hidden Secrets Pavilion only needed a hope. In Wugo paused, and a moment of confusion appeared in his eyes. Was it really possible to change this kind of life? In Wugo looks forward to the Hidden Secrets Pavilion Master's promise, said In Wugo indifferently. He would not easily believe the promises of others, but he would patiently watch. Perhaps he really did have a sliver of hope that this young Hidden Secrets Pavilion Master would promise a change. In the Imperial Army's camp, banners fluttered in the wind and war drums rang out. The two armies clashed. More than 2,000 people fought ruthlessly. It was as if they were on the battlefield, fighting while bathed in blood. Xia Yanwu and the other side's generals clashed. Qi waves soared into the sky, and wherever they passed, soldiers were sent flying. They were unable to block their divine might. Ning Chen and In Wugo calmly watched the battle in front of them, not saying a word. They were serious and focused. A waterfall of blood bloomed in front of them. It was the most beautiful scene in the world. Even saber and sword were unable to stop the blood from flowing out. 30% of the 2,000 people had already fallen. The battle between the two generals had reached its climax. Xia Yanwu really is worthy of being a once-in-a-century martial genius. Ning Chen thought to himself. The 1,000 people behind the third prince were clearly new soldiers. However, by relying on Xia Yanwu's personal strength, he was able to make up for that difference. He was even able to faintly suppress them. Who is your opponent? Asked Ning Chen. The Divine Wind Battalion's commander, Ming Chuan, replied In Wugo. Ning Chen nodded. He knew this person. He had once been one of Marquis Ji most trusted generals. He had experienced hundreds of battles and possessed extraordinary strength. It's about to end. Seeing Xia Yanwu gradually suppress Ming Chuan, Ning Chen narrowed his eyes. Bang! In the next instant, Ming Chuan was sent flying. He had been careless and had been defeated. None of the remaining soldiers were able to resist Xia Yanwu's martial strength. They were quickly defeated. Congratulations to Third Prince on your first victory. After the crowd dispersed, Ning Chen looked at Xia Yanwu, who was gradually walking over, and said with a smile. Jiming Marquis, please forgive me for not going out to greet you. Xia Yanwu laughed warmly. Third Prince is too courteous. Ning Chen also smiled brilliantly. Hypocrites. The two of them looked at each other, the same word flashing through their minds. However, neither of them revealed it. Their brilliant smiles were truly disgusting. Yin Wugo calmly stood to the side, his lips curling into a cold smile. As expected, one was more shameless than the other. Ning Chen and Xia Yanwu laughed heartily as if they were old friends who had known each other for many years. They were equally hypocritical and equally shameless. Only in this shitty world could there be such a perverted, mutual appreciation. Jiming Marquis, what do you think of my 1,000 new soldiers? Xia Yanwu pointed at the soldiers behind him. Not bad, courageous and courageous. They're not afraid in the face of change. Good seedlings. Ning Chen was not in a rush. He cooperated with Xia Yanwu, as if he was also interested in these things. As expected of my Grand Xia's Martial Marquis. Your eyesight is truly extraordinary. Xia Yanwu's skin was not thin. He accepted all of Ning Chen's praise, causing the soldiers passing by to feel embarrassed and quietly walk away. I've heard that third prince is different from others. Seeing you today, I truly admire you. Ning Chen smiled. As for whether his words were praise or sarcasm, it was hard to guess. You're too polite. Xia Yanwu modestly replied. Seeing this, Yin Wugo sighed inside. He was used to the schemes of the Grand Court. Only after seeing the two of them today did he understand what it meant to hide a knife behind a smile. This level of hypocrisy was truly not something a normal person could compare to. Jiming Marquis, it's rare for you to come. Why don't you go take a look at the martial arts field? Xia Yanwu warmly suggested. It would be impolite for Ning Chen to refuse third prince's kindness. Ning Chen gladly agreed, the smile on his face growing wider. The three of them continued on their journey. Xia Yanwu and Ning Chen chatted happily, and soon became brothers. Even though there was Yin Wugo, a taciturn person who wouldn't say a word even if he died, their journey was definitely not dull at all. Brother Ning's subordinate is very special. Xia Yanwu glanced at Yin Wugo behind Ning Chen, his words containing a hidden meaning. Ha, Brother Yanwu overpraises him. He's just an ordinary guard. Ning Chen smiled. Yin Wugo's expression did not change at all. It was as if the two of them were not talking about him. However, under his red robes, the hand holding his sword seemed to have begun to change. He was still unable to understand how the two sides of him could be so different. This young department head had truly allowed him to see a completely different world. Even if this world did not seem much better than the hell he had originally lived in. Ha! The martial arts field was bustling with noise and shouts that shook the heavens. On the inkstone martial arts field, two figures crossed each other. The light from the spear and halberd was so dazzling that people could not open their eyes. By the time the three of them arrived, the battle had already come to an end. Within the golden light, the halberd swept out, the spear was sent flying, and the person was defeated. Chapter 134. A moment of silence was followed by a burst of cheers. Especially the young man's side, their faces were red with excitement. They shouted as if they were the ones in the limelight just now. The young man with a halberd smiled shyly. His face still had a trace of immaturity. However, no one would look down on this young man. Apart from a few big shots in the royal army, no one else could suppress him in terms of strength. Not bad, reward him. Xia Yanwu was in a good mood and waved his hand. Third prince. Third prince. Only now did the crowd notice the two of them. They all bowed respectfully. Xia Yanwu was in a good mood. He had never felt so proud before. Especially after being a hypocrite with Ning Chen for so long, even he himself felt disgusted. Thank you, third prince. On the stage, the young man with a halberd bowed respectfully. A trace of shyness flashed across his immature face. The crowd below the stage laughed. Ha! Our Yenyun is still so shy. However, he is so strong at such a young age. Comparisons are odious. The soldiers in the barracks were very straightforward, whether they were kind, teasing, or just bored. At this moment, the laughter below the stage made the young man even more shy. His face was as red as an apple. Yan Yun, well done. Thank you, Third Prince. It is all thanks to Third Prince's guidance. Ha! Xia Yanwu laughed. Ning Chen and Yin Wugo's eyes met intentionally and then looked away. However, they clearly saw the ridicule in each other's eyes. Shameless. Brother Ning, since you are here, why don't you go up on the stage and teach my disappointing subordinates a lesson? Xia Yanwu laughed heartily and said loudly, as if he was afraid that the people present couldn't hear him. Go to hell. Ning Chen cursed in his heart. However, he still had a polite smile on his face. He replied, Wugo, go and fight with the little brother on the stage. Remember, don't go too far. As for him, of course, he couldn't go up. Xia Yanwu had dug such an obvious trap. He didn't want to jump into it. As the Jiming Marquis, the head of the Department of Justice, fighting with a small soldier, if he won, it would be an unfair victory. As for losing, he didn't think about that possibility. Yes, head. Yin Wugo bowed in response. Soon after, a red light flashed, and before anyone could react, he was already on the stage. Master. The halberd-wielding youth and everyone else below the stage felt a chill run down their spines. Yan Yun, the young man with the halberd, said calmly. Yin Wugo. In the next moment, both of them held their breaths. The sword and the halberd faced each other from a distance. A moment later, only a flash of red could be seen. It was so fast that it made people's hearts tremble. With a bang, the battle began. Sword and halberd clashed. Was it fast, or was it fast? It was so fast that one couldn't see it clearly, so fast that one would die in an instant. Neither of them held back. Sword light, halberd light, crisscrossed, no one knew whose life would be spilled in the next moment. Below, Xia Yanwu's expression became more and more serious. Although he knew that the 13 red-clothed blood guards of the Supreme Court were extraordinary, especially the leader, Yin Wugo, who had never been defeated, as a prince, because he stood too high, he always unconsciously overlooked too many things. Swish! The blood sword was stained with blood, and the red clothes were also stained with blood. The sword and halberd clashed, and the two people's bodies were dyed red at the same time. Not bad. Both of their eyes narrowed. When they moved again, the halberd light was like a tide. Their blood chi surged, and their cultivation techniques were pushed to the peak. One move, one move, one move, and the world shook. Everyone below was dumbfounded. They all knew that Yan Yun was strong, but no one had expected him to be this strong. However, who was this red-clothed man that could force Yan Yun to this extent? Even after such a long battle, he still wasn't at a disadvantage. Brother Ning, this time you've obtained an incredible subordinate. Xia Yanwu sighed. His tone was filled with envy. Brother Yanwu is too polite. You're not bad either. Ning Chen replied courteously. What he said was the truth. This youth called Yan Yun truly did have the qualifications to compete with Yin Wugo. Ha! On the stage, the battle had been going on for a long time, but victory was still hard to determine. The halberd was strong, and the sword was sharp. One was incomparably domineering, while the other was shockingly fast. Their completely different characteristics made the result of this battle difficult to predict. It's about to end. Suddenly, Ning Chen and Xia Yanwu narrowed their eyes. The auras of the two people on the stage rapidly rose. Bloodlight soared into the sky, stirring up heaven and earth. Blinding golden light filled the air. You're the second opponent I've taken seriously. Be careful, said Yin Wugo calmly. Killing intent soared in his heart. His previous indifferent attitude had vanished. An opponent worthy of a battle caused his heart to boil once more. Bloodlight soared. The red mole between Yin Wugo's eyebrows was so beautiful that it looked like it was dripping blood. Yin Wugo raised his sword, and in an instant, the martial platform was dyed red. Terrifying killing intent filled the air, and it affected the boundless smell of blood, turning the surroundings into a bloody hell that would never see the light of day. Xia Yanwu's expression changed. Ning Chen's heart shivered. This was bad. In the face of such killing intent, Yan Yun no longer had the slightest possibility of holding back. His gaze turned cold and his halberd rapidly revolved. Swallow flashes, 100 phoenixes returned to the nest. He and his halberd transformed into rays of light that disappeared. Rays of golden light appeared one after another. Golden swallows fluttered in the air. It was like a swallow flashing, but it was even more like 100 phoenixes returning to the nest. The two of them didn't hold back in the slightest. Terrifying fluctuations instantly caused the entire martial stage to crack. Sword and halberd slashed through the air. One move would determine victory and defeat. Perhaps life and death would also be decided. However, at this moment, Ning Chen moved. He took a step forward and instantly entered the battlefield. Cold snow began to fall from the sky. Silver frost sprinkled down as the life scroll was circulated to its peak. Snow condensed between heaven and earth. His left and right hands pointed forward at the same time. With a clang, he blocked the halberd's advance. Boom! In the next moment, the shockwaves erupted. An unparalleled might caused the entire martial stage to collapse. Boulders flew everywhere, smashing dozens of meters away. The surrounding soldiers quickly retreated. However, there were still some who didn't have time to dodge. Xia Yanwu also moved. He shot out dozens of meters and blocked the falling boulders with his palm, protecting the soldiers behind him. The competition ends here, said Ning Chen indifferently. He shook his hands and pushed aside the halberd. Yes. Yin Wugo calmly accepted the order. He sheathed his sword and the red light faded. Yan Yun also cupped his fists and bowed before retreating to the side. Brother Ning, why don't you come back to the camp with me and have a cup of tea to quench your thirst? Xia Yanwu walked over as if nothing had happened. It would be impolite to refuse. Ning Chen nodded. The two of them walked in front with Yin Wugo following. Before leaving, he glanced at Yan Yun. A trace of interest flashed through his cold eyes. The three of them quickly arrived in front of the camp. Ning Chen and Xia Yanwu walked in while Yin Wugo was left outside. He can come in, said Xia Yanwu. Ha! Ning Chen softly laughed. This is the commander's tent after all. He has a sword on him, so it's inconvenient for him to come in. Brother Ning is too polite. These rules are only used to guard against outsiders. Brother Ning doesn't need to be so reserved, said Xia Yanwu. Thank you, Brother Yanwu. But the rules still have to be followed, smiled Ning Chen. Xia Yanwu didn't say anything more. This knowledge destiny Marquis really was an extremely difficult person to deal with. He didn't seem to care about trifles, but in reality he handled things flawlessly. Brother Ning, please. Xia Yanwu poured a cup of tea and pushed it in front of Ning Chen. Ning Chen received the tea and took a sip. He immediately praised, good tea. The tea wasn't bad, but that was it. It wasn't that he was picky. It was just that he had once drunk the tea personally brewed by Fan Lingyue. Since then, no matter what tea he drank, he would always feel that the taste was ordinary. Brother Ning is too kind, said Xia Yanwu politely. Outside the commander's tent, squads of the Divine Wind Battalion patrolled. Their armor was dense, and under the setting sun, they emitted a biting cold. The Divine Wind Battalion was the most elite battalion of the Imperial City's 11 battalions aside from the Dragon Guard Battalion. Their combat strength was outstanding, and they held an extremely important position in the Imperial City's 330,000 Imperial Guards. Yin Wugo calmly stood outside the tent. His red robes fluttered in the wind, and the red mole between his eyebrows was as beautiful as blood. It gave people an indescribable feeling of disharmony. The two people in the tent chatted for a long time. Only when the sun was about to completely set did Ningchen walk out. "Let's go." Ningchen glanced at the red-robed figure next to the tent. Yin Wugo followed. His footsteps were heavy as he faced the final setting sun and headed west. "Yin Wugo, you did well in today's competition," said Ningchen calmly. He didn't want to waste his breath. The reason he had brought Yin Wugo out was to find a sword. This was Yin Wugo's character, and he didn't need to suppress it. "Thank you, department head," said Yin Wugo. Ningchen didn't say anything more. He had already expressed his attitude. Today, he had acted to stop Yin Wugo, but that didn't mean he would reject Yin Wugo's actions. Yen Yun would definitely be heavily injured in that final move. He had only acted to give Xia Yanwu some face. Xia Yanwu was a smart person. He had always acted straightforward and carefree in front of others, but that was just using his brave appearance to hide his scheming heart. None of the princes of the Grand Xia were simple. After returning to the imperial court, Yin Wugo returned to the Western Palace. Ningchen stood in front of the Hidden Secrets Pavilion for a moment, but in the end, he didn't enter. He turned and left. Right now, the situation in the imperial city was too chaotic. He couldn't be distracted. Her matters could only be discussed later. When night fell, Ningchen didn't return to his residence. Instead, he walked towards Prince Yan's residence. Since he had returned, he hadn't had the chance to thank his senior. Logically speaking, he should go personally. In Prince Yan's residence, the green and red swords flew through the air and stabbed into the ground. Prince Yan stood in front, waiting for someone to come. Soon, Ningchen walked in and bowed respectfully. "Senior." "Yes." Prince Yan nodded and waved his hand. The green sword flew out and landed in front of Ningchen, giving off boundless coldness. "Let me see how much you've improved." Ningchen pulled out the green sword and focused. This was his first time fighting with his senior. He also wanted to see how big the gap was between him and the strongest people in the world. In the battle with the abbot of Du Yi Temple, he had set up too many tricks. He had only defeated the Buddha in the mortal world after many calculations. However, this didn't mean anything. If they fought again, he didn't doubt that the loser would be him and Qing Ning. At the end of his thoughts, Ningchen moved. Frost condensed into a sword and snowflakes surged. A silver shadow streaked across the air. Bang! Prince Yan flipped his hand. The red sword flew across the sky and blocked the green sword. With a bang, the aftershock spread out quickly. Their clothes fluttered in the wind. Chapter 135. Green and red collided. Cold and heat collided. The frost melted quickly, turning into mist and dispersing. Prince Yan retracted his perception of the green sword's aura. He also suppressed his cultivation to the middle stage of the 9th rank to give the junior the greatest fairness. Ningchen already felt unparalleled pressure from the sword. His opponent had no openings at all. He didn't even know where to attack next. Ningchen didn't have the upper hand. He activated the 2 scrolls of the heavenly books at the same time. The scroll of earth activated, causing the chi of thick earth to explode. Between the two, a dark yellow light rose. The gravity instantly increased by more than 10 times. Prince Yan's body sank, but his expression was still calm. The red sword surged with heat and slashed down with the help of gravity. It was faster and heavier. The green sword in Ningchen's hand was instantly suppressed, leaving an opening in front of his chest. Prince Yan reached out his left hand and pierced 3 inches above his heart. He held back but didn't show any mercy. He broke through the advantage of the 2 scrolls of the heavenly books and suppressed Ningchen again. At the critical moment, Ningchen took half a step back. He flipped his left palm, causing waves to surge. He also attacked Prince Yan's chest. Not bad. Prince Yan nodded and dodged to the side. His sword finger swept out and a green sword light shot out. Ning Chen dodged, but with a bang, the ground shook where he was just now. In the blink of an eye, a 3-foot-long sword mark appeared. It was bottomless. Waves of the East. Seeing that his opponent was unshakable, Ning Chen raised his left palm. The blue light shone brightly and the waves rolled. The boundless sea crashed down. First defense, waves break 10,000 miles. After the palm, Ning Chen immediately changed his move. His sword split the sky and slashed down in the waves. Facing the palm power and the sword ray, Prince Yan clenched his left hand. The cold air condensed and an ice sword instantly formed. Green and red breathed together, absolute chi. Prince Yan's 2 swords were as fast as lightning. The green and red swords danced and shone brightly. The moment they shone, countless sword rays flashed past. The 3 moves collided, and a huge explosion erupted. The earth trembled, and numerous cracks appeared, extending for 10 zhang in all directions. Ning Chen's eyes narrowed. His body moved again. One sword split into thousands. In an instant, it condensed into one and reached Qingyi. However, this extremely fast sword was blocked by the even faster red sword. The 2 swords collided, and the aftershock spread out, filling the air with dust and sand. Ning Chen's pupils shrank fiercely. Before he could react, an ice sword had already reached his chest. You've lost. King Yan's hand shook, and the ice sword scattered. He said calmly. Ning Chen was slightly disappointed. He knew that he would lose, but he didn't expect that he would lose so quickly. He had 2 scrolls of the arcane tomes and the cultivation method of the Zhangsun lineage, but he still couldn't gain the upper hand in the face of the senior. If he had switched places with Yan Qinhuang for the last move, he would not have been able to do it as exquisitely as his predecessor. The true intent of the sword was fast, ruthless, and accurate. Of these 3 aspects, the most difficult was accuracy. The slightest difference could lead to a difference of 1,000 miles. Prince Yan waved his hand, and the green and red swords turned into flowing light and disappeared into the sword rack. Do you know why you lost? Prince Yan asked calmly. Your foundation is not solid, Ning Chen said emotionally. Prince Yan nodded and continued, your martial arts progress is too fast, and you have neglected the most basic things. The path of martial arts is not only about ultimate moves. In battle, there are not so many opportunities for you to gather chi and condense moves. The most basic moves are the key to victory. Thank you for your guidance, senior. Ning Chen bowed respectfully and thanked him. His moves were all learned in battle. They were useful, but they were too utilitarian and not solid enough. He didn't pay much attention before, but after today's battle, he realized how big the gap was between him and the strongest person in the world. These days, you have been distracted too much. This will be detrimental to your path of martial arts. The most important thing in martial arts cultivation is to be distracted, especially at the crucial moment of rank 9. You have to be careful, Prince Yan warned. I understand. Ning Chen sighed in his heart. He couldn't leave Zhang Sun alone. As for martial arts cultivation, he would take care of it if he could. If he couldn't, he could only give up temporarily. Prince Yan frowned. He could see that Ning Chen didn't listen. In a month, I will leave the imperial city. I will give you a month to settle these matters in the imperial city. After a month, you will leave with me, Prince Yan said. Although his words were calm, there was no room for objection. Ning Chen was stunned. Just as he was about to speak, Prince Yan stopped him. Don't forget that you are still my sword attendant. In this year, your freedom is up to me. Yes. Ning Chen agreed helplessly. He knew that his senior was doing it for his own good. However, a month was too tight. On the way back, the wind blew gently. Ning Chen walked on the street with a heavy heart. The more he cared, the more he felt that he didn't have enough energy. The situation in the imperial city was not optimistic. The existence of the two princes was like two time bombs that could explode at any time. Apart from that, he even suspected that the three dukes had played a dishonorable role in the background. The loyalty of the three dukes to the Xia kingdom was unquestionable. However, at this time, power was at its most turbulent period. It was inevitable that ambitious people would appear. Unknowingly, Ning Chen passed by the Yi River. Under the night sky, the brothel was at its busiest time of the day. People entered and exited. No matter what era it was, the matters between men and women were irresistible temptations. In front of the Lingyan pavilion, 4 or 5 women with exquisite figures were welcoming guests. Their clothes were so thin that one could see the bottom of their clothes. A large part of their snow-white skin was exposed. The rest of their skin was faintly discernible. Just one look was enough to make one's mouth dry. "Young master, please come in." Ning Chen had just arrived in front of the pavilion when he was pulled by a beautiful and scantily dressed lady. Following that, a gorgeously dressed lady with a slim waist and a fat butt came over to help. She smelled good and smiled coquettishly. Her full breasts were almost pressing on Ning Chen's body, forcefully pushing him in. The pavilion was extremely spacious, but there were already many guests. Most of the tables were already occupied. The lady accompanied him on both sides. Her clothes were half undone. She looked a little drunk and seductive. Her decadent aura made people restless. Ning Chen glanced around the hall without leaving a trace. He acted like an ordinary person, a little shy and a little curious. In front of these pitiful ladies, he would not disturb them if he could. "Young master, this is your first time here. How about big sister accompany you?" As soon as they entered the pavilion, the young lady used all her skills and half-hugged Ning Chen. Her body pressed against Ning Chen's body. Her originally thin clothes were almost no different from being naked at this moment. The fragrance of her body rushed into Ning Chen's nose without reservation, causing Ning Chen, who was still very calm before, to blush. "Ha, little brother, you're shy. I like you so much." Yan Cui knew that she had met a virgin at first glance. Her eyes sparkled and her heart was filled with joy. The young man in front of her was handsome and had a clean aura. Although she had been in this business for a long time and had seen all kinds of people, she still wanted to be with someone she was comfortable with. "I'm here to look for someone," Ning Chen said shyly. "Ha, little brother, don't be shy. Who doesn't come here to look for someone? Don't tell me you're here to eat." At a table not far away, a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes who was surrounded by several ladies laughed. "I'm really here to look for someone," Ning Chen explained in a low voice. "Yes, you're looking for someone. If little brother doesn't mind, sister will accompany you." Yan Cui snickered. She did not expose him and went along with Ning Chen. It was not easy to find someone she liked. She could not scare him away. Ning Chen smiled. He found a place nearby and ordered some dishes. However, he did not touch them. He just drank tea quietly. He did not speak or do anything. He looked simple and normal. Yan Cui was happy. She thought that Ning Chen was shy and was trying to pretend to be calm. She stayed by his side and rubbed her plump chest against him from time to time. Every time she got up to pour tea, her slender waist would bend slightly. Her entire chest was exposed. The fragrance would come and tug at his heartstrings. Every time at this time, Ning Chen's face would blush. His handsome face would look even more shy. Yan Cui giggled. Her intention to tease the little guy in front of her was even stronger. "Sister, what are the things upstairs for?" Ning Chen raised his head curiously and asked with a little shyness on his face. Yan Cui rolled her eyes and said seductively, "Haha, there are fun places upstairs. Little brother, do you want to accompany sister upstairs to have a look?" Ning Chen lowered his head slightly and did not speak. His face instantly turned red. Ding! At this moment, the pleasant sound of zither rang in the attic. The sound of zither was faint and dreamy. In the blink of an eye, it dispelled the decadent sound in the attic. The entire attic was abnormally quiet in an instant. Only the celestial sound echoed for a long time. Fairy Su's zither. The middle-aged man who teased Ning Chen before reacted and shouted with a love-struck and joyful face. I've heard that Fairy Fian is good at both zither and dancing. My young master is here to visit today. I wonder if he can meet you. At the same time, on the second floor, the doors of several rooms opened. A few figures in luxurious clothes walked out. One of the attendants saw the master's eyes and asked. His tone was polite and calm without a trace of neglect. In the room covered by the bead curtain, a clear voice came out. It was like the tinkling of clear water. She declined politely. Miss has not been feeling well recently. She can't meet guests. Please forgive her, young master. Oh. Then I wonder what illness Fairy Su is suffering from. My young master may be able to help. The attendant who spoke earlier chuckled and spoke again. Although his words were still polite, there was a trace of aggressiveness. As soon as the words fell, the scene was silent for a while. Everyone could hear that the attendant's words were somewhat forceful. Fairy Su had been ill for a long time and rarely showed up. This was already a well-known fact. However, the Lingyan Pavilion's background was unfathomable. Few people dared to offend it. But they did not expect such a scene to appear today. Ning Chen raised his head and looked at a room on the second floor. He drank tea while quietly watching this farce. He had no intention of intervening. He had heard of the name Su Fian. She was a 3-time courtesan. Her beauty spread far and wide. Moreover, she was well versed in poetry and books. She was also a rare talent in the world. Chapter 136. It is the young noble of the Nangong family, Nangong Qing. Fairy Su is in trouble now. Someone recognized the young man dressed in luxurious green robes beside the attendant. The Nangong family, a family with 2 marquises, was like the sun in the sky, and was one of the top nobles in the imperial dynasty. Their might was close to that of a martial marquis, and even one of the 11 camps of the imperial army was in the hands of a marquis from the Nangong family. It is rumored that young noble Qing has never asked for love. Why did he suddenly come here today? On the second floor, in front of a room opposite to Nangong Qing, a handsome and frivolous young man laughed. His tone was frivolous, but he did not care about Nangong Qing's identity. The son of Tai Shi Gong, Ji Yu. Seeing the person who spoke, everyone in Yichue Pavilion had weird looks on their faces. As the head of the Confucian sect, the most knowledgeable person in the world, for the imperial tutor to have such a son who was always in love with brothels and did not do proper work, anyone would find it weird. Ji Yu was one of the 3 hedonistic sons of the imperial city. The other 2 were Marquis Tai Ping's son, Chang's son Yunxian, and the other was the oldest Marquis of Desia, the eldest grandson of Marquis Shao Xian. Nangong Qing closed his fan, his slender eyes squinted, and said indifferently, "So it is the only son of Tai Shi Gong. Why, do I, Nangong Qing, need to report to you?" Although Ji Yu was angry, she still replied with a smile, "Of course not. It's just that Su Xianzi is not feeling well and doesn't want to see guests. Why don't you force her? Why don't I treat you to a few drinks?" "No need, I, Nangong Qing, cannot afford to lose face like this." Nangong Qing glanced at the former coldly and said in disdain. He did not want to speak anymore, as though saying another word would be an insult to himself. Ji Yu's chest froze, his handsome face became extremely ugly, and he was speechless. Ning Chen had already shifted his gaze over. After observing for a long time, he could not help but sigh in his heart. A tiger father is a dog's son. This Ji Yu is too lacking in scheming and shrewdness. The few sons of the nobles were at each other's throats, causing the atmosphere to become even heavier. Beside Ning Chen, Yan Chui's face was slightly pale. The frivolous and bold lady from before had disappeared, and her hands subconsciously grabbed onto Ning Chen's clothes. I'm fine. Patting Yan Chui's hand, Ning Chen smiled. Seeing Yan Chui's heart, Yan Chui's face, Yan Chui's, she blushing, her body slightly moving, she moved her body slightly, as she felt, her face, Yan Chui's. At this moment, behind the beaded curtain, the sound of a zither was heard. It was peaceful and pleasing to the ear. Ji Yu's state of mind gradually calmed down, and her pale face gradually became rosier. Young Master Ji, many thanks for your protective feelings. Fei Yan is here to thank you. The bead curtain made a light sound, and a voice that was like the sound of nature came out from behind the curtain. The beads on the jade plate fell, attracting everyone's attention in an instant. Ji Yu's expression froze for a moment, and then she was pleasantly surprised. She replied nervously, "You're too kind, Fairy Su. This is my duty." Behind the bead curtain, the lady's voice came out again, this time with a tinge of coldness. Young Master Nan Gong, Yu Fei Yan's illness is special, and ordinary medicines are useless, so there is no need for young master to worry. And yesterday, the 10th young master had brought the imperial physician over, and said that there is only one type of flower that can cure Yu Fei Yan's illness, and other than that, there is no other way. 10th young master. Hearing that name, Nan Gong Qing and the few noble young masters on the second floor all frowned. I wonder what flower Fairy Su needs, Ji Yu may be able to help. Hearing that Yu Fei Yan was truly ill, Ji Yu became nervous and asked anxiously. Incurable. Ning Chen was startled, then shook his head helplessly. Nan Gong Qing was also startled, but then his mouth curled up, and a trace of ridicule flashed past his cold face. Brother Ji is right, I wonder what flower Fairy Su is looking for, Nan Gong Qing is willing to help. Nan Gong Qing asked. Behind the bead curtain, there was a moment of silence, and then a faint sigh came out. Since the two young masters have spoken, Yu Fei Yan will not hide it anymore. The flower Fei Yan needs is called the Mansha flower. It is hard to find in the world, so I am not willing to tell you. Paramitha flower. Ning Chen's eyes constricted as he muttered, it was the legendary undying flower, it could not be born in the human world, and only grew on the other side of the Yellow Springs. Huh. This young master seems to know the origin of this flower, truly admirable. Ning Chen's momentary loss of composure attracted the attention of the person behind the bead curtain, a gentle voice came out, and in a moment, everyone's eyes were on Ning Chen. Suppressing the ripples in his heart, Ning Chen's expression quickly returned to normal, and he laughed indifferently. I was just lucky to have heard of it, Fairy Su is too kind. Young master is knowledgeable, truly admirable, I wonder if young master can come over, Yu Fei Yan would like to ask young master more questions regarding the Mansha flower. It is my honor. Ning Chen laughed indifferently, and replied politely. Yan Chui unknowingly let go of Ning Chen's hands, fear flashed past her eyes, the man in front of her, was he still the young man she bullied? I'm sorry, I am really here to look for someone. Seeing the change in Yan Chui's eyes, Ning Chen turned his head and laughed lightly, his voice was very soft, only the two of them could hear it, and to the others, it was just the intimacy between a man and a woman. Hearing that, Yan Chui's body trembled, she raised her head and looked into Ning Chen's eyes, only then did she understand that the man beside her was only trying to make her happy, the smile in his eyes was as calm as ever, never changing. Under Yan Chui's gaze, Ning Chen stood up and walked up the stairs step by step. Humph. On the second floor, Nan Gong Qing waved his sleeves, and walked back to his room with a cold face. Today's goal had failed, the background of this Ling Yan pavilion was more troublesome than he thought. But, the arrival of Ji Ming Marquis was truly unexpected. Entering the beaded curtains, in the elegant room, a beautiful figure sat quietly in front of a guqin, her black hair was like a waterfall, her skin was like jade, her beautiful eyes were filled with hope, her peerless appearance had a bewitching charm, every frown and smile revealed an indescribable charm, like a fully bloomed peony, causing people to be unable to shift their eyes away. Seeing that Ning Chen had arrived, Su Fei Yen personally stood up to pour wine, her long hair hanging down, covering half of her beautiful face. She was attentive and meticulous, as though she was welcoming a friend that she had known for a long time. "Young Master Ning, Yen Chui likes you. I hope young master can treat Yen Chui well, and do not hurt a good girl's heart." Without raising her head, Su Fei Yen chuckled, not distant, not pretentious, as though she was just chatting with a friend. Ning Chen laughed, but did not reply. Regardless of what he said, it would be wrong, so he might as well not reply. Men are all so fickle, acting whenever they see a situation. Su Fei Yen raised her head and said softly, her beautiful face flashed with a trace of grief. "Miss Su, your words are a little too much," Ning Chen said indifferently. Su Fei Yen raised her wine cup, an apologetic expression on her face. "Young Master Ning, please don't take offense." It was Fei Yen who lost control of herself. "Miss Su is too courteous, but matters of the heart are just too distant for me." Ning Chen took the wine cup and drained it in one gulp. Su Fei Yen gently smiled, changing the topic. The 10th prince knew that young master would be coming to visit in a few days, so he specially sent a gift ahead of time. "I hope young master can kindly accept it." Half a purple pill appeared in Su Fei Yan's hand. A rich medicinal fragrance wafted out, refreshing the mind. Just by smelling it, one would feel much more relaxed. Ning Chen narrowed his eyes, his aura constantly surging. Even the 2 heavenly tomes began to tremble. Su Fei Yen looked at the half pill in her hand and continued, "This pill is called Extreme Breath. It is said that it has the ability to bring the dead back to life. Unfortunately, there is only half of it left, and the medicinal effect is about to dissipate. However, it should be of help to young Master Ning's injuries. The 10th prince is considerate, but I do not understand why the 10th prince is so confident that I will definitely come here." Ning Chen did not refuse. Taking the pill, he looked at the woman in front of him and asked, "Then why did you come?" Su Fian asked with a sweet smile. "I have come to find you honey." However, it seems that the current manager of the Lingyan Pavilion has already changed, Ning Chen honestly said. "Hani still has other matters to attend to, so I will temporarily take care of this place," Su Fei Yen smiled. "Then, Mrs. Identity has really made me curious," Ning Chen indifferently said. Su Fei Yan's lips curled, but she did not reply. Instead, she stood up and poured another cup of wine. Softly, she said, "Fei Yen is only a prostitute. I cannot enter the Marquis' eyes." "Ha!" Ning Chen did not ask any more questions. Drinking the wine in his cup, his thoughts quickly turned. Ever since he had entered the Lingyan Pavilion, he had noticed that something was wrong. Not only were the women in the pavilion unfamiliar, even some of the previous decorations had changed. He had stayed in the Lingyan Pavilion for a period of time, so he was very sensitive to these changes. It seemed that the Lingyan Pavilion had not simply changed managers, but had already changed owners. But, he did not understand why the 10th prince would hand over such an important place to someone else. It was the most flourishing place in the imperial city. Not only did it bring in money daily, it was also the gathering place for all sorts of information. But, what made him even more concerned was Su Fei Yan's identity. He did not care about it in the past, but after meeting her today, he realized that the 3-time courtesan Belle who rarely showed her face actually had an extremely minute martial qi. Other than Fan Lingyu, it was the first time he had seen someone who could conceal their qi so well. It seemed like the fight for the throne of Xia had attracted a few powerhouses that had been hidden for a long time. 1,000 years of Xia, in the end, had an unparalleled attraction to all the powerhouses. Nan Gongqing's appearance was most likely to probe Su Fei Yan's true identity. On the surface, the 2 marquises of the Nan Gong family had not chosen a side and maintained their neutrality, making people unable to see through them. "Young master, you mentioned the name of the Permetha flower, have you seen it before?" Just then, Su Fei Yen asked softly. There were not many people in the world who knew of the red spider lily. Most of them had only heard of the story of the red spider lily, but did not know that the red spider lily was the red spider lily. No. Ning Chen shook his head. He had seen the yellow springs flower, which grew in the weak water, but he had never seen the red spider lily. What a pity. Seeing that Ning Chen was not lying, Su Fei Yen sighed, her beautiful face flashed with a faint sorrow. Chapter 137. Ning Chen pondered for a moment before asking, "May I ask why Miss Su is looking for the red spider lily?" "To treat it." Su Fian replied. "Oh. According to my observations, Miss Su does not seem to be suffering from a strange illness." Ning Chen revealed a strange expression. "This flower is for the elders of my family to use." Su Fian replied honestly. Ning Chen was silent. The red spider lily only grew on the other side of the yellow springs. However, the bottomless boat beside the Ruo River had already been rowed to the other side. In other words, even if someone found the entrance to the underworld, they would not be able to cross the Ruo River. What a sin! Ning Chen's mood was not very good. In this world, there were very few existences like Ghost Girl. Now that he thought about it, he could borrow the scroll of Earth's guidance to enter the underworld from that time. But he did not know if the red spider lily truly existed. Last time, he had only seen the yellow springs flower and not the red spider lily. If he had time, perhaps he could go back and look for it. "Miss Su, I am unable to help you with this matter." Ning Chen sighed regretfully. Su Fian laughed softly. "Young Master Ning is currently in control of the imperial court and knows all the news in the world like the back of your hand. Could young Master Ning help pay attention to this matter?" "Definitely." Ning Chen replied straightforwardly. "Then I will thank young master." Su Fian bowed gracefully. "You're welcome." Ning Chen thickened his face and accepted this bow. As for the red spider lily, it would depend on whether Su Fian was a friend or foe. Right now, he still could not see through this woman's background and was not in the mood to help. "Miss Su, it is already late. I must take my leave. Please help me thank the 10th prince for his good intentions. Just say that Ning Chen will personally pay a visit in a few days." Seeing that he could not find out any more information, Ning Chen did not want to stay any longer. He stood up and cupped his hands in respect. "Fian will see you off." Su Fian stood up and said softly. "No need. There are too many people outside. It is best if Miss Su does not show her face." Ning Chen turned around and waved his hand before walking away. After Ning Chen left, the smile on Su Fian's face gradually disappeared and her brows furrowed. This Jiming Marquis of the Xia dynasty was as intelligent as the legends. She had a feeling that Ning Chen must know something about the red spider lily. He just didn't say anything. A few months ago, the Netherworld Palace had opened once. Unfortunately, everyone was stuck in front of the Ruo Shui, and no one could pass through. Now, even the entrance to the Netherworld Palace had disappeared, and it was impossible to even enter. It seemed that she still had to find a chance to continue testing the Marquis. The red spider lily was very important to her and she could not let go of any possibility. As Ning Chen exited the Lingyan pavilion, he felt someone's gaze on him. Turning his head, he saw a beautiful figure standing desolately at the entrance. Her eyes gazed into the distance with a hint of sadness, causing one's heart to ache. Ning Chen sighed softly and turned around to leave. He did not stay any longer. Who said that prostitutes were heartless and actors had no loyalty? Among those words that were filled with mockery, who had ever agreed with their sadness? He had never looked down on prostitutes. He came from China, and in the 5,000 years of history, there had been too many admirable prostitutes. Behind this, it set off the coldness of men. The truly heartless ones were always men, and he was no exception. Yan Chui was a good girl. Unfortunately, they were not fated to be together. His heart would not change for anyone. No matter who he hurt, it would be the same. As the night wind blew, Ning Chen threw away his emotions and his heart hardened again. Before helping Zhang Sun solve these problems, nothing else was important. After returning to the Marquis mansion, Ning Chen saw that the lights were still on. He quickly walked a few steps and saw little Mingyu lying on the table full of food, waiting for him to come back and eat. Ning Chen's heart flashed with a trace of guilt. He only cared about his business and forgot about little Mingyu. He said that he would go out for a while, but now the sky was completely dark. Mingyu saw the bad guy come back and a bright smile immediately appeared on her face. She jumped down from the stool and ran over to greet him. You must be hungry. I'm not back yet, so you can eat first. Ning Chen's heart ached as he rubbed the little girl's cloth hat and said softly. I secretly ate a little. Mingyu shyly stretched out her hand and gestured. Ha! Ning Chen chuckled and immediately held the little girl's hand to return to the house and sit down to eat. The food was all served and had obviously been reheated many times. Ning Chen picked up his chopsticks and put a lot of meat into little Mingyu's bowl. He said softly, don't be picky, or you'll be sick all day like your sister Lingyu. Mingyu looked at the bowl full of meat and vegetables and her face turned bitter. She hated meat the most. Finish it quickly. I'll grill fish for you tomorrow. Seeing that the little girl did not move her chopsticks, Ning Chen coaxed her. Okay, Mingyu answered obediently, and then started to eat in small bites. Ning Chen ate a few mouthfuls with her. Most of the time, he watched the little girl eat. Mingyu was actually very picky with her food. Without anyone watching, it was hard to feed her. Mingyu, did your sister Lingyu say when she will teach you martial arts? Ning Chen asked softly. No. Mingyu shook her head and answered. Do you want to learn? Ning Chen continued to ask. No. Mingyu replied unenthusiastically. Ning Chen nodded and did not try to persuade her. If she did not want to learn, then forget it. This matter could not be forced. It was normal for girls to have no interest in martial arts. Just like Ah Man. She was very talented and had a Xiantian father to guide her. However, she did not like martial arts. Her progress in martial arts had always been frighteningly slow. Since she did not want to learn, then so be it. If there was a chance, martial arts was not the only thing in this world. After a while, Mingyu finally finished eating the rice in her bowl. She was so full that she did not want to move. She had eaten too much. Are you still going out tomorrow? Mingyu asked. Why? Ning Chen asked curiously. Tomorrow is my birthday. Mingyu said softly. Ning Chen was startled. After a while, he reacted and said, I'm not going out tomorrow. He had originally planned to visit the 10th prince's residence. However, since it was little Mingyu's birthday, he would just let the 10th prince die. Hearing the bad guy's answer, Mingyu smiled happily. Okay, it's time to sleep. Let's make a big cake together tomorrow. Ning Chen pulled the little girl up and said. What's a cake? Mingyu asked curiously. Food. You'll know tomorrow. Ning Chen replied. He tried to remember how to make a cake. In his previous life, he had made it before. However, there was no oven here, so it was a bit troublesome. Mingyu was 8 years old now. He had to give her a different birthday. Mingyu would return to northern Meng and continue to be the emperor. He did not have much time left to accompany her. The next morning, Mingyu woke up at dawn. She ran to the bad guy's door and knocked hard. It's time to get up and make a cake. Ning Chen woke up from his meditation and opened the door. He saw little Mingyu dressed neatly and standing there. Her little face was full of anticipation. Brush your teeth and wash your face. After that, we'll go buy ingredients. Ning Chen instructed. Okay. Mingyu ran back to her room and started to prepare. The toothbrush was made from pig's hair. Ning Chen made it himself. After a while, the two of them squatted in front of the door. They were brushing their teeth while spitting out pig's hair. "Hey, bad guy, can this thing not shed hair?" Mingyu asked with foam in her mouth. "Hey, when I have time, I will ask the workshop to improve it. I'm also not good at this." Ning Chen replied while spitting out the hair. "Give me more when it's done," Mingyu said with a lisp. "Okay," Ning Chen replied. The two of them quickly finished brushing their teeth and had a simple meal. After that, they went shopping hand in hand. Making a cake was very troublesome. It required a lot of ingredients: eggs, flour, sugar, milk, oil, salt, etc. The two of them shopped from morning until late in the morning. Only then did they manage to buy all the ingredients. "Do you want to buy anything else?" Mingyu asked. "I also need a frying pan." Ning Chen looked left and right and replied. "I've never heard of it." Mingyu shook her head. She knew about pots, but this was the first time she heard of frying pan. Ning Chen also had a headache. Had this thing not been invented yet? Transmigration really wasn't something that humans could do. It was always a crosstalk. "Forget it, I'll go back and make one." Ning Chen looked for a long time and did not see it. He gave up looking for it. No matter if there was a frying pan or not, he would make one himself. There should be such a thing in the palace, but he did not know what it was called. The two of them carried their bags back to the residence and chased out all the chefs in the kitchen. Then, they started to work. The chefs looked at each other. They did not know what their master was doing. "Mingyu, go and crack some eggs. Remember to separate the yolks and whites," Ning Chen instructed as he busied himself. "Okay." Little Mingyu was wearing a big white work uniform. She carried 2 big porcelain bowls and ran to the side to help. Ning Chen started to prepare to make a pot. There was no frying pan in the residence, but there was something very similar. It was a bit rough and the bottom was a bit round. Ning Chen stared at it in a daze for a long time. What should he do? Mingyu quickly divided the eggs. Even if she messed up her hands and face, she was still better than a certain someone. Will it work? Mingyu looked at the bad guy who was still in a daze and asked doubtfully. Yes. Ning Chen immediately replied. Was this a joke? How could it not work? It had to work even if it did not work. I don't care. Ning Chen took the pot and placed a round iron plate on top of it. He stuck it on top of it and made do. He could not use the flour now, so he mixed it with the corn starch he bought. Fortunately, there were stores that sold it. Otherwise, he would die if he made it himself. Go and sift it. The finer the better. Ning Chen handed the flour to little Mingyu and said. Okay. Mingyu took the flour and asked the chef for a sieve. Then, she continued to work. Outside the kitchen, more and more servants gathered. After a few days of getting along, everyone knew that their master was actually a very peaceful person. He did not have many rules. Therefore, everyone was not reserved. At this moment, footsteps sounded outside the door. A little eunuch came and shouted, "The Empress's decree has arrived." I'm busy. If you have something to say, say it. Ning Chen was so busy that he could not find his bearings. Master, Her Majesty summons you to the palace. The little eunuch smiled apologetically. No. Ning Chen shook his head without hesitation. Go back and tell Her Majesty that I'm sick and can't go. If he went now, he would most likely be scolded again. He did not want to make himself uncomfortable. Chapter 138. The little eunuch was in a difficult position. This lie was too fake. It would be strange if Her Highness believed it. Is the flour sifting done? Ning Chen glanced at little Mingyu who was sitting far away and shouted. It's done, cough cough. Mingyu ran over with flour in her arms. Her face was pale, except for her two big eyes. Ning Chen took the flour and wiped little Mingyu's face. It didn't come out, so he didn't care and continued with his work. What are you stirring? Mingyu blinked her big eyes and asked. Egg white and sugar. Ning Chen took 3 chopsticks and stirred with all his might. Without an egg beater, he could only use brute force to solve the problem. After a while, the egg white turned into foam and couldn't be poured out. Ning Chen put it aside and began to clean up the egg yolk. The little eunuch was left to the side. No one cared, no one asked, and he was a little dazed. Ning Chen suddenly remembered that there was such a person. He looked at the little eunuch and shouted, Someone come, send little eunuch back. Remember to pay for the tea. Yes. The old steward walked out and came to the little eunuch who was speechless. He turned sideways and said, Eunuch, please. Marquis. The little eunuch came back to his senses and was about to persuade again when he was interrupted by a voice. Mingyu, don't be naughty. If the egg white is ruined, there won't be any cake to eat today. Oh. Mingyu quickly retracted her small hand and smiled embarrassedly. The little eunuch left dejectedly, thinking about how to report back with a gloomy face. In the kitchen, Ning Chen was in a hurry. In the blink of an eye, he forgot about Jiang Xuan's summons. After the egg yolk and flour were mixed, there weren't many steps left. Ning Chen poured half of the egg white into the flour paste, stirred it twice, and then threw it to little Mingyu. Do as I did. Stir it up and down. When it's smooth, pour the rest in and continue stirring. Okay. Mingyu replied. She immediately took the paste and stirred it as if she knew how. Ning Chen nodded with satisfaction. This child was teachable. Little Mingyu didn't have any problems. Ning Chen walked to the pot and carefully brushed a layer of oil on the surface of the pot. Bad person, there are so many bubbles. What should I do? Mingyu shouted. Poke it. Ning Chen replied. Mingyu felt a little dizzy. There were so many of them, how long was she going to poke them? Aunt Li, give me a needle. Mingyu looked at a middle-aged woman with a pretty face at the door and waved her small hand. Okay. Aunt Li hurriedly brought over a few needles. Ning Chen cleaned up the pot and came over to help. He held a needle and poked the bubbles one by one. The two of them busied themselves for half a day and finally wiped out all the bubbles. Then, they poured the cake paste into the pot and started baking it. Bad guy. Will it work? Mingyu asked doubtfully. I should be able to, Ning Chen replied, obviously lacking confidence. The two of them waited quietly in anticipation. One was the Northern Meng Emperor and the other was the martial Marquis of the Great Xia dynasty. They surrounded the stove and were so nervous that they did not dare to speak. The solemn atmosphere also spread among the people outside. They all stood at the door and waited with wide eyes. After a long time, the aroma of the cake wafted out. The unique sweet aroma quickly spread out, making everyone look forward to it even more. It's about time. Seeing that the color of the cake was gradually turning yellow, Ning Chen moved the pot away and carefully cut the cake from the pot with a knife. Let me try, Mingyu shouted impatiently. Ning Chen cut a piece and brought it to little Mingyu's mouth. After seeing the little girl take a bite, he also took a bite. It's delicious. Their eyes unexpectedly lit up. It was sweet and delicious, soft and glutinous. The taste was excellent. Bad guy, you're really a genius. Mingyu smiled and praised. Of course. Ning Chen accepted the little girl's worship without any modesty. Mingyu cut a piece of cake and ran to the door. She handed it to Aunt Li who had brought the needles and said happily, Aunt Li, try it. Thank you, young master. Aunt Li hurriedly took the cake and thanked him. Everyone looked over with envy and desire. They all wanted to know how the Marquis's rare thing was like. Aunt Lee broke the cake piece by piece and handed it to the people around her. Each of them took a small bite and tasted it together. "How is it?" The people who did not get any asked anxiously. "It's delicious." The people who ate it looked at each other and immediately nodded. "If you want to eat it, make it yourself. It's all here. Bye." Ning Chen glanced at the chefs and arrogantly left with the cake. Little Mingyu giggled and also left. The chefs looked at each other and had a headache trying to recall how the Marquis made it. This day was the most lively day in the Marquis's mansion, especially in the kitchen. From time to time, there were people's regretful voices. The cake was ruined again. Ning Chen and little Mingyu enjoyed the fruits of their labor happily, ignoring the feelings of a large group of people in the mansion. "The Empress is here." At this moment, the guard outside the door announced. It was the eldest grandson. Cough, cough. Ning Chen was so scared that he choked on the cake and coughed violently. "Hide." Ning Chen immediately hid the cake in the cupboard and was about to run away in a panic. It's too late. Mingyu was also a little overwhelmed by the nervousness of the bad guy and said anxiously. "What excuse did I give just now?" Ning Chen was so scared that his memory was not good and asked anxiously. "Sick." Mingyu quickly replied. "Yes, sick." Ning Chen ran back to the inner room, took off his shoes and lay on the bed. He did not care whether it was hot or not and covered himself with 2 quilts. "Empress." The maids in the mansion did not have time to retreat and knelt down nervously. "Where is Ning Chen?" Zhang Sun asked angrily. The Marquis is in the room." A maid stammered. Qing Ning glanced at the mansion and could not help but feel strange. Why were there only these few people in the mansion? Clang. The door was pushed open. Zhang Sun entered the room and saw Ning Chen lying on the bed. She sneered and asked Mingyu, "Mingyu, what happened to him?" "Sick, sick." Affected by Ning Chen, Mingyu was also fearful of the Empress of Great Xia and stammered. "Imperial physician, check on the Marquis Jiming's illness." Zhang Sun glanced at the old imperial physician behind her and said coldly. "Yes." The old imperial physician replied respectfully and quickly walked to the bedside to take Ning Chen's pulse. Mingyu and Ning Chen broke out in cold sweat. Zhang Suan's move was too ruthless. She even brought an imperial physician over. A moment later, the old imperial physician stood up and walked to Zhang Sun. He said respectfully, "Empress, the Marquis's pulse is slightly chaotic. It's a sign that he has not recovered from his injury. He just needs to be carefully treated. This Empress understands. You can go back." Zhang Sun said. "Yes, this official will take his leave." The old imperial physician bowed and left. Seeing the old imperial physician leave, Qing Ning hurriedly gave little Mingyu a look, indicating for a certain person on the bed to quickly confess. Unfortunately, it was too late. Zhang Sun walked forward and grabbed Ning Chen's ear. She said angrily, still pretending. "You're getting bolder and bolder. You dare to not go when this Empress summons you." Little Mingyu took 2 steps back without any loyalty. This great Xia Empress was too fierce. She did not dare to provoke her. Not far from the door, the maids were also frightened by the commotion in the room. In their impression, the Empress was a gentle and virtuous person. Why was there such a big difference? In the room, Ning Chen knelt on the bed with his head down. He did not even dare to breathe. Qing Ning and little Mingyu retreated further and further away. No one dared to persuade him. They could only pray for the best. Zhang Sun scolded him for a while before sitting down to drink some water and catch her breath. Outside the manor, when the guards heard that the Marquis was scolded, they could not help but smack their lips. They were much more well-informed than others. They knew that the Marquis had just been scolded by the Empress in the Heavenly Mandate Palace 2 days ago. In less than 2 days, he was scolded again. Where are the servants in your manor? Where did they go? Zhang Sun suddenly remembered the situation when she entered the manor. There was such a great marquee, but there was not even a shadow. In the kitchen, Ning Chen did not hesitate to sell everyone out. As the saying went, it was better to die than to die. Zhang Sun would not do anything to the others. At most, she would scold them. The cake was not eaten for free. They had to be scolded together. What are they doing in the kitchen? Zhang Sun frowned. Making a cake, Ning Chen said honestly. Zhang Sun frowned again. What nonsense was this? What is a cake? In the corner of the room, Qing Ning whispered. Food, Mingyu also whispered. Ning Chen made it. Qing Ning asked again. We made it together, Mingyu whispered. What are you whispering about? Zhang Sun glanced at the two and said coldly. Ning Chen hurriedly gave little Mingyu a look. The little girl understood and ran back to the central room. She brought the cake over and put it on the table. Then, she retreated far away. Did you make it? Zhang Sun looked and asked. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. Zhang Sun picked up a piece and took a bite. The taste was not bad. It was not worse than the snacks in the palace. Why did you make this? Today is Mingyu's birthday, so I tried to make it, Ning Chen said honestly. Zhang Sun thought for a moment and glanced at little Mingyu. Then, she said, Mingyu, come here. Mingyu was a bit scared, but she still walked over. She kept encouraging herself. She was the empress. Who was she afraid of? Zhang Sun took a phoenix hairpin from her hair and put it in little Mingyu's hand. I came out in a hurry today and didn't bring anything. This phoenix hairpin has been with Ben Gong for 20 years. Although you can't use it, it's a little token of Ben Gong's appreciation. Seeing this, Ning Chen muttered in his heart. You gave it to the right person. I will definitely use it. Thank you, Mingyu whispered as she held the phoenix hairpin. Zhang Sun smiled and did not say anything else. Mingyu was only a child. Moreover, she had been with this brat for so long. Whether it was as the Empress of Xia or as Ning Chen's elder, this gift could not be lacking. Although this brat was usually carefree, he was actually very narrow-minded. If she did not express it, he might say bad things about her behind her back. After saying this, Zhang Sun remembered something. She looked at Ning Chen, who was still kneeling on the bed, and asked calmly, I heard that you already went to Third Prince's Divine Wind Camp. Yes. Ning Chen nodded. How was it? Zhang Sun continued to ask. The military discipline is strict and there are many experts. It's very troublesome. Ning Chen's expression became serious. This third prince was not easy to deal with. Adding on the Divine Wind Camp, it would be very difficult to deal with. Chapter 139. With Grand Xia's current situation, both princes had to be careful. Any one of them could rebel at any time, so they had to be on guard. He had met the third prince before, and he had also gone to Lingyan Pavilion, which was related to the 10th prince. He realized that the water behind this was much deeper than he had imagined. Did you find anything in the imperial court? Zhang Sun asked with a serious expression. There aren't any concrete clues. The people in charge are all very tight-lipped. However, the death of Ying City's city lord was untimely. It must be related to one of the princes or the 3 dukes, Ning Chen said. Who do you suspect? Zhang Sun narrowed her eyes and asked. The 10th prince. Ning Chen sternly replied. This was the current situation. Duke Shiyu supported the 10th prince, and the former head of the Department of Justice was on the 10th prince's side. It was very difficult for Xia Mingri to be cleared of suspicion. Zhang Sun frowned and said, Be careful. The 3rd prince and the 10th prince will continue to try to rope you in. Don't give in so easily. Don't worry, I know what to do, Ning Chen said calmly. Zhang Sun nodded. After feeling that there was nothing else to ask, she took out a golden dragon insignia and threw it on the bed. This is the commander's seal of the Dragon Guard Battalion. I'll leave it with you. If there's any trouble, you decide what to do. Ning Chen was slightly stunned. Looking at the insignia on the bed, his eyes flashed with disbelief. The Imperial Guards of the Imperial City were different from other armies. Even if he was a Marshal Marquis, he could not easily mobilize them. The Marshal Marquis's special authority of 100,000 soldiers had never included the 330,000 elite Imperial Guards. Zhang Sun giving him the commander's seal of the Dragon Guard Battalion was equivalent to entrusting him with her life. This was because more than 90% of the Imperial Guards in the Imperial Palace were soldiers of the Dragon Guard Battalion. This consort only has the Dragon Guard Battalion. The other 3 battalions are in Zi's hands. If there's anything, you can discuss it with Zi. This consort is a woman and cannot hold military power for a long time. Zhang Sun said calmly. Although her voice was soft, it gave Ning Chen an incomparably heavy pressure. Consort, aren't you afraid that I'll rebel? Ning Chen smiled bitterly. This consort is still alive. You don't have the guts, Zhang Sun replied indifferently. Ning Chen was helpless. Fine, he really didn't have the guts. It didn't matter if Zhang Sun had military power or not, it was the same. Since you've already been dragged into this, there's no need to be overly cautious. If anything happens, I'll take care of it. As long as I'm still alive, no one in the Imperial City will dare to touch you. Alright, I'm going back. There are still many things to do in the palace and I don't have time to stay here. With that, Zhang Sun got up and left. Before she left the room, she paused and said calmly, the cake is good. When you have time, go back to the palace and teach Qing Ning how to make it. Qing Ning glanced at Ning Chen, who was still kneeling on the bed, and a complicated look flashed across her eyes. Then, she followed after him. The two of them left in such a carefree manner that Ning Chen was left alone, unable to speak for a long time. Ming Yu sat by the table and quietly watched the bad guy ponder in silence, not daring to disturb him. Your Highness, the burden you've given him is too heavy, Qing Ning said worriedly after leaving the Jiming Marquis residence. To others, these rites might be an honor that could only be chanced upon by luck, but to Ning Chen, it was only a burden. I know what to do, Zhang Sun sighed softly. This was the most difficult time for Great Xia. In these days, she had already felt that she was seriously powerless. Although Zi was trustworthy, he was too upright. Now, she could only entrust Ning Chen to her. She was very clear about what kind of person Ning Chen was. She didn't have the confidence to keep him by her side forever. She could only give him as much as she could and keep him for as long as possible. The only thing she could keep him with was trust, not power. In the northern Meng camp, Fan Lingyue sat in the commander's tent in deep thought, quietly considering every step of the deployment in the future. Northern Meng needed to cherish time. After all, this was Great Xia, and the longer they dragged it out, the better it was for Great Xia. No matter how smart a person was, they couldn't predict everything like a god. What they needed to grasp the most was not every detail, but the overall situation. The later Great Xia's internal problems erupted, the more time Great Xia had to catch its breath. In other words, Northern Meng's situation would become more serious. She needed to do something to make the decision-makers of Great Xia nervous. Qing Wuyo, Fan Lingyue said. Present. Qing Wuyo entered the tent and knelt down. Send someone to secretly contact the third prince of Great Xia. Tell him that I want to talk to him, Fan Lingyue ordered. Qing Wuyo was startled and subconsciously asked, what if he rejects? It doesn't matter. Whether it succeeds or not is not important to us. You just need to send someone over. If he rejects, continue to send someone to talk to him, Fan Lingyue instructed. Yes. Qing Wuyo received the order and left. He still didn't understand what the military advisor was trying to do. Fan Lingyue stood up and walked to the front of the tent, silently looking in the direction of Great Xia's imperial city. Today was Mingyue's birthday. Was she doing well? Cough cough. Suddenly feeling a tightness in her chest, Fan Lingyue covered her mouth and coughed lightly. Drops of blood flowed out and dripped down from her palm. Your body can't hold on for much longer. Unknowingly, Mu Qingxue walked in front of the commander's tent. She was dressed in white and her beautiful face was as calm and cold as before. It's fine. While speaking, Fan Lingyue's eyes flashed with exhaustion. No matter what, she had to hold on. She had already fought until here, she couldn't fall short. That Ning Chen is very powerful. You have to be careful, Mu Qingxue calmly reminded her. Ah. Fan Lingyue smiled tiredly. After a while, she slowly asked, Mu Qingxue, I've always been curious about something. Since you remember everything, why did you only forget about him? She had long known that Ning Chen had gone to Sword City. In this world, there were very few people who knew that Mu Qingxue was the one who had tried to assassinate Emperor Xia. Coincidentally, Ning Chen had entered the palace at that time. The two of them had met each other, which was logical but also inconceivable. Mu Qingxue's expression didn't change. He indifferently said, I naturally don't need to remember unimportant things. There's nothing to be curious about. Hearing this, Fan Lingyue smiled and didn't ask anymore. What happened between them wasn't important to her. What was important was that Mu Qingxue represented Sword City. That was enough. In this world, anyone could surrender to Great Xia. Only Sword City couldn't. Therefore, she could still maintain her trust in Mu Qingxue and Sword City. Ximing Marquis Manor. After Zhang Sun left, Ning Chen didn't leave the manor for 2 days. During this time, Su Fian sent someone to send an invitation to Ning Chen, inviting him to participate in Yin He's new courtesan gathering 3 days later. The top courtesan assembly was held once a year. It was very lively and was not inferior to the Lantern Festival. Every time, it would attract a large number of scholars and beauties. High officials and nobles in the imperial court were also not rare. Ning Chen looked at the invitation and casually threw it to the side. Ming Yu curiously took it and looked at it. She asked, what kind of place is this Lingyan Pavilion? A brothel. Ning Chen honestly replied. Ming Yu purposely dragged out her voice. Her small face was full of disdain. A bad person was indeed a bad person. He even received this kind of invitation. Little girl, what are you thinking about? Didn't I tell you before that I stayed there for a period of time? Ning Chen unhappily said. You also didn't say it was a brothel. Ming Yu continued to look down on him. I didn't say. Ning Chen was astonished. You didn't say. Ming Yu nodded with certainty. Ning Chen rubbed his nose. Could it be that he really didn't say? He had said too many words to fool people. He really couldn't recall them all at once. Are you prepared to go? Ming Yu asked quietly. Do you want to go? Ning Chen didn't answer, but asked back. Ming Yu hesitated for a moment, but in the end, curiosity won over reason. She nodded and said, yes. Then let's go. Ning Chen smiled lightly. Bringing a child to a brothel, this was probably something only he would do. However, the courtesan gathering was different from usual. At least there weren't so many unsightly things. It would be good to let little Ming Yu join in the fun. Moreover, this courtesan gathering came at such an opportune time. If he didn't go, he would be letting down the people behind this. 3 days passed quickly. Before the 3rd day even turned dark, Ming Yu impatiently wanted to leave. Ning Chen pulled little Ming Yu and carefully covered up any traces of a girl. Only then did he feel assured and lead the latter out of the manor. Do you know how the courtesan gathering is chosen? Ming Yu asked curiously as they walked. I don't know. Ning Chen shook his head. He really didn't know how the courtesan gathering was chosen. However, this thing should be similar to the beauty pageants in the modern world. It was just a show and then a bunch of people would vote. Why don't we buy a courtesan gathering and bring her home? Ming Yu's face was full of anticipation. Why buy her? She can't do any work. Even if we buy her, she'll just be a vase. Ning Chen wasn't very interested. Ming Yu thought about it. That was true. Courtesan gathering sounded nice, but it really wasn't very useful. The two of them chatted as they walked. Finally, when the moon rose, they reached the banks of the Yin River. The bustling crowd in front of them really gave the two of them a fright. Large and small flower boats were motionless in the middle of the river. The largest flower boat in the middle was surrounded by many smaller flower boats. It was brightly lit and extremely lively. Because the large boat in the middle had limited space, other than a few high officials and nobles who already had invitations, everyone else had to pass the test on the surrounding boats before they were qualified to board the large boat where the courtesan gathering would be held. Ming Yu, give me the invitation. In front of a small boat, Ning Chen spoke. It was great to have an invitation. They didn't need to line up or fight monsters to pass. They could directly go to the last boat and eat while pleasing their eyes. Ming Yu was stunned. Immediately, her face showed a hint of embarrassment. She said embarrassedly, I left in a hurry and forgot to take it. Ning Chen's eyes darkened and he almost fell down. How could this little ancestor forget such an important thing? Make way, make way. A large group of people behind him squeezed onto the boat and entered to take the test. Ming Yu looked at the surrounding crowd and was a little scared. She carefully said, why don't we go back and take it? Seeing that there wasn't much time left and that the courtesan gathering was about to begin, Ning Chen made up his mind. He gritted his teeth and said, no need. We'll go through. Isn't it just a few tests? We'll just go through them. Chapter 140. The flower boats swayed, and there was a hubbub of voices. The bustling crowd came and went. Some were excited, and some were disappointed. It was a bustling scene. This was the busiest night in the imperial city. The successive wars of Great Xia had put too much pressure on the people. On this night, they all chose to temporarily forget their worries and enjoy themselves to the fullest. Ning Chen held little Ming Yu's hand and walked into the nearest flower boat. The first thing that entered his eyes were two gorgeously dressed ladies and four burly men. The screen on the boat was decorated with lights. Under the bright red lights, an eye-catching couplet made the people who entered scratch their heads. Holding back my tears to look for red, tender as water. Just 9 short words. There were no traps between the lines. It was just a couplet with a deep meaning. It looked simple, but it was actually quite difficult. Ming Yu felt dizzy. Although she had learned some of the culture of the Central Plains, it was mostly about the 4 books and 5 classics and how to rule a country. She basically did not learn the specialties of these scholars and beauties. Do you know how to do it? Ming Yu asked softly. Yes. Ning Chen thought for a moment before answering. After which, he picked up a piece of paper on the table and wrote down the answer. Dancing with clear shadows, thin bones facing the wind. Ming Yu read it softly. She did not understand, but it seemed to be very powerful. After handing over the paper, a voice sounded from behind the screen, pass. The crowd instantly let out a cry of surprise. The way they looked at the youth in front of them changed. The 2 brothel ladies bowed and said respectfully, young master, this way please. Thank you. Ning Chen nodded in return. Then, he pulled little Ming Yu to another flower boat. The flower boats in the Yin River were all connected. After passing the first test, one could cross the bridge between the boats and board the second test. There were also many people gathered on the second test. They all came from different boats. The couplet for the first test stopped a lot of people, but many people passed. However, When Ning Chen brought little Mingyu over, he saw that everyone was frowning as if they had encountered a big problem. There were still 2 beautiful ladies and 4 men on the boat. They were guarding a screen. This was the question for the second test. On the screen, there were 5 words written clearly: Wing Chun does not see spring. This was a poem composition question, and the difficulty was obviously much higher than the previous one. Many of the scholars fell into deep thought. The Confucianism of Great Xia was flourishing, and there were many scholars. However, going too far was just as bad as not going far enough. After the Confucianism reached its peak, it showed signs of decline. The scholars now were not as good as before. Most of them were reluctant to part with the false reputation they had left behind in the brothel. The ancient style no longer existed, and the number of true scholars was becoming fewer and fewer. The 2 of them stopped in front of the screen for a moment. "Will you?" Mingyu raised her head and asked again. "Yes," Ning Chen replied. When the people who were still thinking saw someone raise a pen to answer, they immediately gathered around. Pei returns to the light snow, as if cherishing the bright sun, don't understand the cold wind and flowers, turn over Ling Mei Lu Qi. The 5-character quatrains that were vividly written on the paper did not contain a single word of spring, but they described the scenery of winter leaving and spring coming in vividly. Good poem. Everyone present had some knowledge of poetry. They could tell at a glance that the poem was outstanding. The young man in front of them was a genius. After the answer was sent to the screen, the result quickly came out. There was no superfluous words. There was only one word: pass. Ning Chen and little Mingyu successfully passed again. Under everyone's envious gazes, they walked to the next flower boat. "Who is this person? Why haven't I seen him before?" someone asked curiously. "That's right. Logically speaking, such a talented person shouldn't be unknown," a blue-clothed man around 30 years old replied. "Unfortunately, I forgot to ask for his name," the previous person said regretfully. "Forget it. There's no point in thinking about this. Let's think about how to pass this stage first," the blue-clothed man replied. At this time, many people who had passed the first stage had begun to gather on the boats for the second stage. After seeing the questions, they all shook their heads. This year's questions were even more difficult than last year's. But behind the screen, another voice of rejection rang out. In a short while, this was already the 7th person. There were good and bad poems. It wasn't as if one could pass just by writing it. "It's so difficult. Who can pass?" a newcomer complained. "Shoo, lower your voice. Someone already passed," the blue-clothed man beside the young man said. "So fast?" The young man was shocked. The blue-clothed man whispered a few words into the young man's ear. Immediately, the young man was so shocked that his mouth fell open. "How come I've never heard of such a person?" The young man was very puzzled. "I don't know. Right now, everyone is guessing who this person is," the blue-clothed man shook his head. Ning Chen, who had already left, naturally didn't know what was happening behind him. At this time, he and little Mingyu had already boarded the 3rd boat. "Can you?" Mingyu subconsciously asked when she saw that the bad guy wasn't speaking. "No." Ning Chen vigorously shook his head. The 3rd stage's question was actually to write a scholarly essay. Wasn't this asking for his old life? "It's a free point," Mingyu said with astonishment. "I really can't." Ning Chen blushed with shame. He could write a couple of poems, but writing a scholarly essay was really impossible. "Then I'll do it," Mingyu softly asked. "All right." Ning Chen nodded. Mingyu stepped forward. Without thinking too much, she directly started writing. In a short while, she wrote a scholarly essay neatly, causing Ning Chen to be stunned. This child wasn't raised for nothing. The essay was delivered to the screen. After a while, an old voice sounded out, "Your literary talent isn't bad. Pass." "Of course, don't you see whose child you are?" Ning Chen very proudly said. He looked happier than if he had passed himself. After passing the 3 stages, the 2 of them were the first to board the last big boat. Ming Yu was a child and didn't take up a spot. She just had to follow the adults. The 2 of them worked together perfectly. Passing the 3 stages was as simple as drinking water. After quietly boarding the big boat, they quietly found a corner to sit down. Inside the boat, the figures of rich and powerful people could be seen everywhere. They all came with invitations. Ning Chen swept his eyes over them. He basically didn't recognize any of them. The second floor of the boat was filled with private rooms. The beaded curtains blocked the figures behind. Sitting in one of the private rooms, one could overlook the stage below where the courtesan belle selection was held. These were all people with real status. It was impossible for them to casually show their faces. Ling Yan Pavilion had also taken this into consideration and specially arranged these private rooms. Has the Jiming Marquis not arrived yet? In a private room on the second floor, Su Fei Yan asked. No. A maid replied. The private room of the Jiming Marquis was still empty. Moreover, the person in charge of checking the invitations had not seen the Jiming Marquis arrive. Su Fei Yan frowned. This didn't make sense. How could the Jiming Marquis not come? Send someone to continue waiting. Once there is news, immediately report back. Yes, Mississippi, the maidservant bowed and quickly retreated. In the corner of the banquet, the woman in charge of pouring wine looked at the 2 people in front of the table strangely. There were actually people who went to the brothel to take care of children. It was said that rich and powerful people had many strange habits. When is it starting? Ming Yu looked at the stage in the center of the banquet and asked. Don't worry, it should be soon. Ning Chen replied softly. Before he finished speaking, the sound of a zither rang out. Immediately, the entire boat quieted down. The sound of the zither was faint, quietly seeping into the hearts of everyone present. Ning Chen quietly drank his wine. Thoughts flashed through his mind. This Su Fei Yan's identity was really hard to fathom. Just by using the sound of the zither, she was able to affect people's minds. This kind of cultivation technique was rare. It seemed that when he returned, he would have to ask his seniors to see if he could obtain any useful information. The sound of the zither was very pleasant to listen to. It was like a clear spring. Ning Chen had 2 heavenly books protecting him, so he was not affected by the sound of the zither. As for little Ming Yu, with his qi in her body, there was no need to worry. It's nice. Ming Yu raised her head and said very softly. Eat something first. I'll take you to see her in a bit. Ning Chen patted the little girl's cloth hat and said. Okay. Ming Yu obediently replied and immediately continued to eat. They had come out in a hurry and had not brought their invitations. They had not eaten dinner. Adding on the fact that they had just composed a poem and written an essay, they were really hungry. At this time, on the stage, 10 women floated down along with the red silk. They were all wearing blue embroidered clothes. Their faces were different, but they were all exceptionally beautiful. Accompanied by the sound of the zither, they began to dance. Everyone's gaze was immediately attracted to them. They were unable to take their eyes off them. Ning Chen and Ming Yu raised their heads and glanced at them. Then they lost interest and continued to eat. The 2 of them had seen too much dancing. There was no lack of singing and dancing in the palace. This mangosteen is so hard. Ming Yu held a stalk of mangosteen. After pinching it for a long time, she still could not open it. Here. Ning Chen took it and crushed it. Then he fed it to the little girl one by one. Ming Yu did not feel embarrassed. She took it and ate happily. It's quite sweet. Ning Chen also stuffed a piece into his mouth and commented. Mangosteen was not easy to preserve. It spoiled easily. Only the rich and powerful could eat it. On the side, the maid looked at the 2 of them and her expression became even more strange. The two of them had been eating since the beginning and did not care about anything else. Their behavior was too strange. Ning Chen's skin was so thick that it was hard to measure. He did not care about the maid's opinion at all. As for Mingyu, as an empress, she could not care about everyone except for the people she cared about. It was unrealistic for an empress to consider the thoughts of a servant. Is the Marquis Jiming here? Seeing that the competition could not be delayed any longer, Su Fian's hand stopped playing the zither. Reporting to Miss, he hasn't. A maid respectfully replied. Don't wait any longer. Let them begin. Su Fian frowned and ordered. Yes. The maid accepted the order and left. In the corner of the banquet, hearing the zither music disappear, Ning Chen raised his head. His eyes narrowed and he softly reminded, Mingyu, it's about to begin. As soon as his voice fell, on the stage, 5 beautiful figures slowly descended. Their red clothes were like blood. They were so beautiful that people could not take their eyes off them. When the 5 of them arrived at the same time, their superior temperament and appearance instantly caused the surrounding 10 beautiful figures to lose their splendor. Chapter 141. Each of the 5 most beautiful women in red had a breathtaking appearance, especially the one in the middle. She was so beautiful that it was suffocating. The zither in the middle played softly. Her enchanting figure was accompanied by a beautiful sound, making her the most dazzling figure of the day. The 4 women in red danced, their red sleeves moving together, shaking everyone's minds. Since ancient times, it was no wonder that heroes were attracted to beauties. Beautiful women were a source of trouble. This was not because the women were evil, but because the men's willpower was often weak in front of beautiful women. Most of the people present were disciples of nobility and never rejected women. But when they saw the beautiful figures on the stage, their gazes were completely drawn away. Buy one and bring it home, Mingyu softly advised the 5 women in red. There was not a single dancer in the manor, so it was quite boring. These people looked pretty good and could be used to pass the time when they were bored. No money. Ning Chen shook his head without hesitation. His salary was personally set by Zhang Sun. At most, it was just enough to cover the manor's expenses. He did not know how Zhang Sun calculated it, but there was not a single bit left for him. Mingyu was a bit depressed. This was indeed a big problem. They really did not have any money. She had been the emperor for 7 years, but this was the first time she had seen such a miserable marquis. The salaries of court officials were usually fixed. She had never seen someone like this who even had his salary controlled. Not long after, the courtesan competition began. As expected, the results were decided by the votes of the people present. However, this vote was not for free. It was bought with money. The 5 women in red on the stage were all famous courtesans in the imperial city. They had a large number of suitors, and among them were not ordinary nobles. Spending money was never a problem. I'll give you 10 taels to play with. Ning Chen took out a small ingot and gave it to Mingyu. I choose the one in the middle. Mingyu happily took the ingot. Young Master Ling offers 300 taels for Miss Lu. Young Master Li offers 700 taels for Miss Chu. Young Master Yu offers 1,000 taels. Voices rang out one after another, each bringing up a shocking number. It had to be said that the nobles in the imperial city were all rich. Throwing away 1,000 taels of gold was not just for show. The brothel had always been a bottomless pit for spending money. Young Master Ming is giving 10 taels of silver to vote for Miss Lu. At this moment, a surprising voice sounded from the corner of the banquet. Everyone was stunned and subconsciously looked over. The maid who was reporting the number looked a little nervous. On the second floor, Su Fian was also startled when she heard this voice. She immediately stood up and walked to the front of the curtains. Looking at the 2 figures in the corner of the banquet, her eyes unconsciously narrowed. So, he had already arrived. At the corner of the banquet, Ning Chen felt the gaze from the second floor. He raised his head and smiled. In the end, the woman in red who was playing the zither in the middle won with an absolute advantage and won the title of top beauty. Lu Ruoxi, a good name. What a pity. Ning Chen glanced at the woman on the stage and sighed. He didn't say anything else. No matter how beautiful a woman was, there would be a time when her beauty would wither. In a land of prostitution, the higher one was held, the harder one would fall in the end. The previous courtesans did not have a good ending. It was already an honor to be able to marry into an influential family as a concubine. If they were unlucky, it was very likely that they would be chased out of the house after they grew old. This sigh was Ning Chen's pity for the fate of such a beautiful woman. However, it was only this sigh. Everyone had their own path and he didn't want to change anyone. Today, she was playing the zither on the stage while he was admiring below. This was their fate, nothing more. At this time, a steady and heavy voice sounded from the second floor. Miss Ruoxi has also learned the graceful dance. How about she dance for everyone? This suggestion is very good. Another voice came from another box, agreeing. During the banquet, everyone immediately agreed and requested the new courtesan Belle to perform a graceful dance for everyone. Ruoxi, please. On the high stage, Lu Ruoxi bowed to everyone. Her beautiful face carried a slight trace of weakness, causing people to feel a desire to protect her. In the next moment, her red dress rose and her long sleeves covered her face. She danced with light steps. At first, she was slow, but later, she became faster and faster. Her red dress was like the most beautiful butterfly. In the most beautiful years of her life, she was trying her best to bloom with her brilliance. The graceful dance was the most difficult dance in the world. In the past, Su Fei Yan's graceful dance had shaken the world. Today, she reappeared again and was still so stunning that people couldn't take their eyes off her. Everyone was intoxicated by her beauty. After tonight, it would be difficult to forget. Swish! At this moment, a bright sword light flashed in front of everyone's eyes, piercing towards the beautiful figure dancing on the stage. It was so sudden that no one could react in time. Ning Chen saw it, but he didn't make a move. On the second floor, Su Fei Yan also didn't make a move. Her calm eyes were ruthless and indifferent. Time seemed to stop. On the high stage, Lu Ruoxi's eyes shrank fiercely. Her beautiful face turned pale, but she was powerless. She could only watch as the sword light came closer and closer. This was the cruelest world. In the face of scheming and scheming, the life of a weak woman was not worth mentioning. At the final distance, Lu Ruoxi closed her eyes in despair. Perhaps, this was a good result. Ding! In the end, the sound of the zither still rang out. The assassin's sword was affected. It deviated by 3 inches and pierced Lu Ruoxi's shoulder. Blood splattered everywhere. During the banquet, everyone finally reacted. A few military disciples immediately rushed forward and fought with the assassin. In the corner, Ning Chen was still quietly drinking wine. It was as if all this had nothing to do with him. Are you not going to help? Ming Yu asked softly. No need. Ning Chen shook his head. Oh. Ming Yu nodded and didn't ask any more questions. Behind the curtain on the second floor, Su Fei Yan looked at the indifferent Ning Chen. Her eyes narrowed. What a good Marquis. This self-control and coldness made her have a whole new level of respect for him. There was no doubt about Lu Ruoxi's charm. No one could have predicted this sudden attack. However, under such circumstances, the martial Marquis of Great Xia was still able to remain indifferent. If he wasn't truly cold-blooded and heartless, then he was truly too calm. It turned out that there were men in this world who could resist the temptation of beauty. Fan Lingyu's secret was a pity. If the hero didn't save the beauty, then the rest of the play would be difficult to continue. Su Fei Yan's fingertips once again plucked the strings of the zither. On the high platform, the assassin was hit in the chest by a military disciple. Blood spurted out and the assassin fell straight down. The scene was chaotic for a while. However, Ning Chen and Ming Yu still sat quietly in the corner, watching this farce. "Young lord, young lady invites you." After a long time, a young girl dressed as a maid walked over and respectfully bowed. Ning Chen stood up, not surprised at all. He had never thought that this was just an ordinary courtesan's gathering. Su Fei Yan would definitely send someone to invite him. This was an unquestionable matter. The maid walked in front while Ning Chen pulled little Ming Yu behind her. Because of what happened just now, everyone's attention was attracted and no one cared about the three's departure. On the second floor, behind the beaded curtain, two people sat. One was Su Fei Yan and the other was Lu Ruoxi. Looking at them from a close distance, the injured Lu Ruoxi's expression was somewhat weak. She looked even more lovely. After Ning Chen and Ming Yu arrived, Su Fei Yan spoke. "Ruoxi, you can leave first." "Yes," Lu Ruoxi bowed and immediately retreated. Su Fei Yan poured a cup of tea and placed it in front of Ning Chen. Intentionally or unintentionally, she asked, "What does young lord think of Ruoxi?" Ning Chen picked up the tea and lightly said, "Miss Su should know my background. No matter how beautiful a woman is, it is useless to someone from the palace. What if young lord has never been cleansed?" Su Fei Yan suddenly asked. Pang! The teacup shattered and spilled onto Ning Chen's hand. A trace of blood overflowed from the broken porcelain. "Miss must be joking." Ning Chen took the handkerchief from little Ming Yu and gently wiped it. There's no need to resort to insinuations in front of a straightforward person, and Fei Yan has never liked to joke about serious matters. Having said that, Su Fei Yan once again poured another cup of tea and handed it to the young man. "Ruoxi has reached the age where she should be married. Sooner or later she'll be sent away. If young master doesn't like her, then she'll only end up being a plaything." Su Fei Yan's words were cruel, but they were also the truth. A woman would always age and decline. After all, a woman from a brothel had a disgraceful identity and was destined to not have a good ending. However, the current Lu Ruoxi was at the peak of her beauty. There were many people who wanted to take her into their arms. Nodding at this time would undoubtedly be a big favor. The tea was delicious, sweet and bitter. Ning Chen took a sip and calmly said, "What does it have to do with me?" Then, Ning Chen got up and said, "Miss Su, if there is nothing else, then I will take my leave. The time is late and Ming Yu still needs to rest." Su Fei Yan was startled for a moment, but after a moment, she returned to her senses. Softly smiling, she didn't urge him to stay. "Qiu Lan, send young lord off." "Yes." A woman in a luxurious dress walked in and answered. "No need to go through so much trouble," Ning Chen said, refusing to be sent off. After the two left, Qiu Lan asked with a puzzled expression, "Miss, why didn't you ask him to stay? We know too little about him. Rashly trying to rope him in may have the opposite effect. I didn't expect him to be so indifferent towards Ruoxi's matters." Su Fei Yan's delicate brow wrinkled. This Xi Ming Marquis was far more difficult to deal with than she had imagined. Then what about Ruoxi? Qiu Lan thought for a moment and couldn't help but ask. "Send her to the Xi Ming Marquis mansion. If the Marquis doesn't accept her, then bring her back to Matchmaker. Whether she wants to receive guests or give her to the rich and powerful, it's up to Matchmaker." Su Fei Yan carefully tidied up the tea set on the table. Clang! In the box next door, the sound of something falling rang out, causing Qiu Lan to frown unhappily. This girl's burden is getting bigger and bigger. She actually dared to eavesdrop on their conversation. At the tea table, Su Fei Yan's mouth curved up into a beautiful arc. Half of her face was covered by drooping black hair, making it difficult to see clearly. Chapter 142. The night was like water. Ning Chen stood quietly in the courtyard of the residence for a long time, as if he was petrified, motionless. Beside him, an ordinary sword was stuck in the ground, nothing special about it. He was waiting for the best opportunity. He was also thinking about where he went wrong. In today's courtesan assembly, Su Fian gave him a big surprise. Very few people knew about his secret of not being cleansed, and they were all trustworthy people. The only exception was Fan Lingyue. If it was really Fan Lingyue who sent out the news, then this matter was worth thinking about. In the world, there were not many people who could catch Fan Lingyue's eye. If Su Fian had the ability to make a deal with him, then this woman's background might be more terrifying than he imagined. Su Fian's intention to rope him in was obvious. On the surface, the Lingyan Pavilion was working for the 10th prince, but he always felt that it was not so simple. The change of ownership of the Lingyan Pavilion came too suddenly. Su Fian had been hiding in the imperial city of Xia Kingdom for so long, it was impossible that she was just a secret chess piece of the 10th prince. The battle for the throne of Xia Kingdom had reached the most intense moment, and it was not surprising that there would be any changes. What he needed to do was to do everything possible to keep the changes out of the picture. Zhang Sun gave him the commander's seal of the Dragon Guards. It could be said that he had put down the greatest trust and power, and he could not afford to let it down. The road from the palace gate to the heavenly mandate hall was his bottom line. Before the situation was clear, no one could think of stepping in. The night was getting darker, and the brightly lit imperial city was also gradually dimming. Ning Chen was still standing in the courtyard, waiting for the opportunity to come. Ming Yu was sleeping soundly in the house, hugging the big doll she bought, sleeping very sweetly. The little girl was excited for the whole day, and was also very tired. After returning, she quickly fell asleep. It was more than half an hour, and this was the most tiring time for a person. However, the figure in the courtyard put on the devil mask, pulled out a sword, and moved quickly in the direction of Yin He. In the night, a black figure flashed by, and before anyone could react, it had already disappeared. On the Yin River, the flower boats had already docked. After the people left, there was a desolation after the bustle. In the Lingyan Pavilion, Su Fian, who was preparing to rest after a tiring day, suddenly felt a chill all over her body, as if she was being watched by something dangerous. Swish! Bright sword light appeared, resplendent to the extreme. It was unknown how many times stronger than the sword today. This was a truly breathtaking sword, making people's hair stand on end. Su Fian did not see the figure behind the sword. She only saw the dazzling sword light. Her mind was extremely focused. With a flip of her hand, the spring lightning zither appeared. The zither spun and with a clang, it blocked the fatal sword. A single string stuns the eyes. A string was plucked, and the sound of the zither was heard. A purple brilliance spread out and closed in on the intruder. The earth suddenly trembled, and a stone slab flew up. With a bang, it collided with the purple brilliance, blocking the power of the string. As the shockwaves spread out, the two of them took a step back and temporarily separated. Miss! At this moment, Qiu Lan, who was next door, pushed open the door and entered. When she saw the black-clothed figure in front of her, her face was filled with anger. Be careful. Su Fei Yan's expression was solemn as she reminded. The person who came was not ordinary. Today, there would most likely be a fierce battle. Under the Yiksha mask, the corners of Ning Chen's mouth curled up slightly, flashing the coldest smile. The scroll of the earth was activated, and a dark yellow brilliance shone brightly. The floor of the room started to change under the influence of the scroll of the earth. It started to shake violently. Qiu Lan was the first to move. She flipped her sleeves and sent a palm strike. Su Fian responded, and the spring lightning zither plucked two strings. The purple brilliance appeared again and turned into circles of ripples that spread out. Ning Chen did not move. The long sword in his hand slashed down. The sword was swift and fierce, scattering the purple brilliance. At the same time, their palms met. With a bang, they met Qiu Lan's attack head-on. Ugh! The strong and unshakable power made Qiu Lan unable to withstand the huge force. She retreated a few steps and vomited blood. Su Fian's expression changed. She no longer held back and plucked all 4 strings. The purple thunder sounded like 1,000 birds chirping. The surrounding tables and chairs exploded and turned into pieces in the lightning. For strings cry, purple thunder frightens the gods. The valiant move turned the entire room into a purple thunder world. The thunder rumbled and roared. Facing Su Fian's shocking ultimate move, Ning Chen once again activated the Earth Scroll. A vast amount of true qi was activated. The shattered floor flew in front of him and turned into a huge wall. The thick earth was poured into it, and in a moment, it solidified. In the next moment, the purple thunder crashed into the huge wall. The sky was filled with shattered stones. The aftershock was so strong that even Ning Chen was unable to withstand it. He retreated 3 steps and the qi and blood in his body became restless. On the other side, Su Fian was not feeling well because she had forcefully activated the power of the 4 strings. Her true qi was severely depleted, and the 4 fingers on her right hand were bleeding. Retreat. His goal had been achieved. Ning Chen was not willing to fight anymore. He moved his feet and quickly retreated. Qiu Lan wanted to chase but was stopped by Su Fian. Don't chase. You are not his opponent. Qiu Lan stopped and looked at Su Fian. She asked, Miss, where did this person come from? I couldn't tell. From the beginning to the end, he had been deliberately hiding his moves. I didn't expect that there was such a strong person hidden in the imperial city. Su Fian said seriously. The strength of the person who came was beyond imagination. If not for the fact that he could not use his full strength, he would have been even more terrifying. Now the situation was a bit troublesome. Her skills had already been exposed and this could become a hidden danger. The night outside was getting darker and darker. After Ning Chen left the Lingyan pavilion, he quickly rushed forward. After a long time, seeing that no one was chasing him, he stopped and took off the mask on his face. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth and dyed the evil ghost mask red. Although he had blocked the last move, it had affected his old injuries. Ding! Suddenly, the air around him condensed and a bell rang. Ghost Qi gradually rose and a ghostly palanquin came from the distance. The black and white impermanences opened the way while Oxhead and Horseface carried the palanquin. With each step, they rapidly approached. Ghost Woman. Seeing this strange scene, Ning Chen was startled and his expression changed. Young man, I trust you have been well since we last met. From within the palanquin, a voice came from far away. It was thin and cold, causing people to involuntarily shiver. Ghost Woman, this is the human world. It is not a place you should have come to. Ning Chen's expression gradually became cold. I have come to take back the Earth Scroll that belongs to the underworld. From within the palanquin, the Ghost Woman spoke. I didn't think that the one who took the Earth Scroll that day would be you. You found the wrong person. Ning Chen coldly said. Even if you deny it, it is useless. Today, I will definitely take the Earth Scroll away. Before she finished speaking, the palanquin stepped forward. The black and white impermanences, Oxhead and Horseface stepped forward. In the blink of an eye, they were already 3 zhang away from him. Ghost Desolation Art, 100 ghosts trapped the heavens. 100 ghosts appeared and a cold wind whistled. One after another, ghostly figures flew out from the palanquin. In the blink of an eye, they trapped the surrounding area. Ning Chen retreated, his expression heavy. It seemed that when he had fought with Su Fian, he had exposed the secret of the Earth Scroll. He didn't think that the Ghost Woman would be so sensitive to the Earth Scroll. What was troublesome now was that the injuries in his body were showing signs of flaring up. Moreover, he had never fought with anyone from the underworld before. If they fought, he was afraid that he would be at a disadvantage. Thinking of this, Ning Chen took a step forward and rushed forward. His sword pierced towards the figure in the palanquin. The situation was unfavorable. He had to end this quickly. Ling ling, the black and white impermanence's morning staffs rang out as they struck towards the newcomer. Ning Chen was unmoved. He flipped his palm and knocked away the two morning staffs. His figure quickly approached the palanquin. Ding, the sound of metal and stone rang out. Oxhead used his body to block the palanquin. He was as firm as a boulder. The long sword was unable to advance even an inch. Unbreakable body again. Ning Chen coldly snorted. He withdrew his sword and used his palm. With a bang, his palm landed on Oxhead's body. Immediately, a huge force spread out and sent Oxhead flying. There was no longer any obstruction between the two. Ning Chen rushed into the palanquin. His sword followed him as he drew out the most dazzling rays of light. Broken soul, inside the palanquin, a ghostly light blossomed and welcomed the sword light. Boom! The collision of the two extremes caused the most terrifying shockwaves. The palanquin was unable to withstand the huge force. With a bang, it shattered and scattered in all directions. The ghost woman appeared. She was wearing a bright red wedding dress. Her head was covered with a red veil and her face could not be seen clearly. Only the cold ghostly chi around her body caused people's hair to stand on end. Ka, an ear-piercing sound rang out. The long sword in Ning Chen's hand shattered into pieces. Before it even fell to the ground, it was quickly turned to dust by the ghostly chi. I'll say it one last time. Hand over the earth scroll. Under the red veil, her bright red lips opened. Impossible. Ning Chen was still unmoved as he coldly replied. Then die. The ghost woman's body moved. Her slender white hand reached out and stabbed towards Ning Chen's dantian. Ning Chen did not dare to hold back. His aura erupted as he activated the two scrolls of the heavenly book. With a bang, he met the attack with his palm. A martial Marquis versus a ghost woman. This was the most powerful battle below the innate stage. The brazen power shook the surrounding ground. Cracks appeared on the street, extending for dozens of feet. 100 ghosts sealed the sky. There was no way out. Ning Chen had no choice but to fight his way out. In this brilliant battle, half of the street was destroyed. The ground was destroyed and the houses collapsed. It was a scene of devastation. The ghost woman's strength was shocking. Her every move was astonishingly powerful. Even though Ning Chen had two scrolls of the heavenly book and his foundation was unparalleled in the world, it was still difficult for him to fight. Just as the two of them were locked in a fierce battle, a pair of calm eyes slowly opened in the Yen Prince's mansion. Clang! The green sword flew out from the sword rack. It turned into a shooting star and swept towards the battlefield. In the next moment, the green sword fell from the sky. With a bang, it cut through 100 ghosts and annihilated the ghostly chi. The ghost woman's expression changed and she quickly retreated a few steps. People from the underworld should not appear in the human world. Leave, Prince Yen said calmly in Prince Yan's manner. 3 disasters expert. The ghost woman's body turned cold. Her heart trembled. There was actually such a terrifying expert in the Grand Xia Imperial City. Senior, this child has the underworld's scroll of the earth. I must take it back, said the ghost woman respectfully in the direction the green sword had come from. Ning Chen, return it to her, said the Yen Prince calmly. Hearing this, Ning Chen's expression became difficult. After a long time, he sighed softly. He activated his cultivation and forced out the scroll of the earth from his dantian's qi. The shattered golden paper floated in front of him. Its golden light was brilliant, but it was much dimmer than when it had been whole. Take it. Ning Chen waved his hand and the golden paper flew back into the ghost woman's hand. The ghost woman took the shattered scroll of the earth and frowned slightly. However, she still bowed solemnly. Many thanks. I owe you a favor. There's nothing to talk about. Bye-bye. Ning Chen was a bit depressed. He waved his hand and walked away. Chapter 143. Returning the Earth Scroll, Ning Chen's heart was filled with regret. Although he had already memorized the mantras and moves inside, this was something that he had risked his life to obtain after all. Returning it just like that, he was really unwilling. However, since the senior had already spoken, he could only endure it. Ah! How depressing! After taking 2 steps, Ning Chen still felt unbalanced in his heart, so he walked back. Upon seeing Zhang Xian's return, Demonis was taken aback as well, not understanding what was going on. Why don't we continue fighting? If I win, you can return the Scroll of Earth to me, Ning Chen suggested seriously. In Prince Yan's residence, Prince Yan smiled faintly. He didn't care anymore and slowly closed his eyes. This brat is starting to cause trouble again. Let him do as he pleases. The green sword hummed and turned into a shooting star as it flew back from afar. With a clang, it entered the sword rack. On the other hand, Ghost Girl was a little confused by the young man's sudden change in thinking. For a moment, she didn't know how to answer. It's almost dawn. I have to go back. A moment later, the Ghost Girl came back to her senses and tactfully refused. Are you afraid of light? Ning Chen asked curiously. I'm not afraid. I just don't like it. The Ghost Girl shook her head. Ning Chen nodded thoughtfully, and then asked, I want to know, is there really a red spider lily in the underworld? Yes. The Ghost Girl nodded. 100 years ago, I saw one on the other side of the Yellow Springs. However, it was destroyed by the Underworld Child. Underworld Child. Ning Chen frowned. This was the first time he had heard this name. The Ghost Lady waved her hand, and a ghost pearl condensed from ghost chi appeared. This is the Netherworld Pearl. It can avoid the poison of the weak water. If you want to find the red spider lily, you can come to the underworld to find me in the future. Ning Chen unceremoniously took the ghost pearl and put it away. It would be a waste not to take it. Compared to the Scroll of Earth, he had suffered a great loss. Where is the entrance to the underworld? Ning Chen asked. The place where you entered hell for the first time, 300 kilometers to the west, at the end of the misty forest. As soon as she finished speaking, ghostly light rose from her body. The shattered ghost palanquin seemed to have sensed her presence and reassembled itself, returning to its original state in the blink of an eye. Oxhead and Horseface lifted the palanquin, and the Ghost Girl entered. The black and white deities cleared the way, and they left step by step. Be careful of Underworld Child. This was the final warning. As the figure gradually disappeared into the distance, Ning Chen stood at the same spot for a moment before he also left. In Prince Yan's mansion, Ning Chen walked over. The butler opened the door and welcomed him in. Senior. Ning Chen entered the inner hall and bowed respectfully. Yes. Prince Yan stood up and replied. Senior, there's something I don't understand. I hope you can help me, said Ning Chen respectfully. Speak, Prince Yan said calmly. Ning Chen carefully described the situation of his battle with Su Fian. This was the first time he had seen such a technique and he was not used to it. Hearing Ning Chen's description, Prince Yan narrowed his eyes and said, it's the Spring Thunder Zither and the 7 Strings Heavenly Technique. If I am not wrong, this woman should be a descendant of the Heshi dynasty. Heshi dynasty? Ning Chen frowned. He had heard of this name before. 1,000 years ago, the ancestors of the Great Xia dynasty conquered the north and south and defeated countless countries. The 2 strongest countries were the Zine Empire and the Heshi Empire. The Heshi dynasty was slightly weaker than the Zine dynasty, which was the strongest at that time. However, it still brought a lot of trouble to the Great Xia. Prince Yan nodded and continued, the Spring Thunder Zither is the national treasure of the Heshi dynasty. Combined with the 7 strings heavenly technique, its power is shocking. It is said that when the 7 strings are used together, even a 3-disaster realm expert cannot block it. Wasn't the Heshi dynasty destroyed? Why are there still descendants left? How can the great Xia's emperor tolerate such a thing? Ning Chen did not understand. No matter when, what every emperor feared the most was the remnants of the previous dynasty's imperial family. As long as they discovered them, they would spare no effort to exterminate them. Prince Yen said faintly, "Things aren't as simple as you think." In fact, not only the Heshi dynasty, but even the Xin dynasty had descendants who survived. During the war, the Great Xia had wiped out too many countries and couldn't wipe them all out. Moreover, the 2 dynasties had 3 disaster realm experts holding down the fort. The ancestors of the Great Xia didn't dare to push them too hard and could only let them escape. Ning Chen was silent. This was troublesome. If the 10th prince really did have a deal with the previous dynasty's imperial family, then no matter what, he could not sit on the throne of the Great Xia dynasty. "Senior, this junior still has matters to attend to and will take his leave first." Thinking of this, Ning Chen bowed and turned to leave. When he returned to the Marquis' mansion, before Ning Chen could enter the room, a black-clothed figure quickly walked over and respectfully said, "Reporting to the Marquis, the spies have reported that the 3rd prince is in contact with Northern Mang." Hearing this, Ning Chen frowned and said, "Continue to keep an eye on them. Report back immediately if anything happens." "Yes." The black-clothed figure accepted the order and quickly left. Truly insane. Ning Chen coldly snorted as a cold light flashed in his eyes. For the sake of the throne, these 2 people had gone crazy. The waning moon moved westward and the night was coming to an end. Ning Chen returned to his room and wrote a note before sending it to the imperial court. 2 hours later, the sun had risen. Outside the door, a guard ran in to report. "Marquis, the 10th prince sent someone to deliver an invitation. Please come to the front hall. I will be there shortly." Ning Chen said. "Yes." Not long after, Ning Chen arrived at the front hall of the Marquis' mansion. When he saw the 2 women, he did not look surprised. The invitation was placed on the table while Lu Ruoxi stood quietly to the side. Her peerlessly beautiful face had a touch of weakness as she faced the unknown future, causing one to feel pity for her. Qiu Lan stepped forward and bowed. "Marquis, the 10th prince knows that the Marquis' mansion still has no dancers, so he sent Ruoxi here to express his sincerity." "I will accept the invitation, but you can take her away," Ning Chen calmly said. Lu Ruoxi's face was slightly pale as she knelt and said, "Marquis, Ruoxi has reached the age of marriage. I can either receive guests or be sold to influential officials. The best result is that I will be sent away with some silver when I grow old. Ruoxi does not dare to have any extravagant hopes. I only ask for a place to stay. I hope the Marquis can fulfill my wish." Lu Ruoxi's eyes were filled with tears as she pleaded. At this moment, she no longer looked like a courtesan, but a pitiful woman who only wanted a place to stay. No one could bear to refuse. As long as one was a man, no one could deny Lu Ruoxi's charm. As a courtesan, her alluring appearance and enchanting figure were enough to make all men go crazy. However, this was an era that paid attention to matching social status. No matter how beautiful one's appearance was, it could not cover up their low status. Without someone to protect them, they would only end up as a plaything. So what? What does that have to do with me? It was still a simple sentence without any emotion. Ning Chen was not moved at all, showing the coldest side of human nature. Hearing this answer, Lu Ruoxi's tender body trembled, her face turned pale, and tears unconsciously flowed from her eyes. "See them out," Ning Chen lightly said. "Yes." At the front door, a guard walked in and immediately stretched out his hand, motioning for the 2 to leave. Qiu Lan and Lu Ruoxi had no choice but to leave with the guard. Before leaving, Lu Ruoxi once again looked pleadingly at Ning Chen, but all she received was the most ruthless indifference. Young miss, it's a failure. In the Lingyan pavilion, Qiu Lan looked at Su Fei Yan who was playing the zither and respectfully reported. Oh. He still refused. Su Fei Yan stopped playing the zither and thought for a moment, in that case, let's give him to the matchmaker. Behind Qiu Lan, Lu Ruoxi's tender body trembled fiercely. Kneeling down, she pleaded, young lady, please give me another chance. No need, go and prepare. From today onwards, everything will be arranged by the matchmaker. Facing Lu Ruoxi's pleading, Su Fei Yan coldly refused. With her last hope shattered, Lu Ruoxi's face instantly turned ashen. Her beautiful eyes were empty, without a trace of light. After the courtesan assembly, the Yin River was still very lively. Flower boats flowed, and talented scholars and beautiful women shared a drink and enjoyed the beautiful scenery. The 10th prince arrived, and after a short conversation with Su Fei Yan, he immediately boarded a flower boat and quietly waited for someone to arrive. At noon, Ning Chen also arrived and boarded a flower boat. Ji Ming Marquis, please. Xia Mingri politely said. Ning Chen sat down and looked at the 10th prince who was about the same age as him. He was not in a hurry to speak. Ruoxi, come and pour wine. Xia Mingri said. Yes. Lu Ruoxi walked over. Her eyes were lifeless and had lost a lot of color. Ning Chen was still indifferent, and his expression did not change in the slightest. Xia Mingri observed for a long time and finally sighed in his heart. This Marquis Ji Ming really was like the legends, cold-blooded and ruthless, without the slightest mercy. Withdraw. Xia Mingyue finally decided to give up on this chess piece and softly said. Lu Ruoxi was startled, and her eyes instantly recovered. Looking at the two people, she didn't know where her courage came from. Ignoring the 10th prince's order, she once again knelt in front of Ning Chen. Marquis, you are a martial marquis with great power, why can't you tolerate a weak woman like Ruoxi? Lu Ruoxi's face was filled with anger and unwillingness. Hearing such a bold question, Xia Mingri's eyes flashed with a touch of surprise. He had underestimated this weak woman. Miss Lu, what do you want? Ning Chen did not get angry and calmly asked. A place to stay. Lu Ruoxi replied. I'll give you a chance. As long as you can give me a reason to keep you, I'll give you a place to stay. Ning Chen raised his head and lightly said. Lu Ruoxi's beautiful eyes instantly lit up with hope, as if she was drowning and had grabbed onto the last life-saving straw. She desperately clung to it. However, after a moment, most of this hope quickly disappeared. The Marquis's request sounded simple, but in reality, it was very difficult. What else could a woman from a brothel have besides her body? She was not stupid and could clearly see that the Marquis had no interest in her body. Lu Ruoxi's eyes gradually dimmed. She really could not think of any reason for the Marquis to keep her. Don't say I didn't give you a chance. Although the Marquis's mansion is big, it does not raise idle people. This Marquis really can't find a reason to keep you. After waiting for a long time, Lu Ruoxi still did not reply. Ning Chen indifferently spoke without a trace of pity, slowly pushing the former into the abyss of despair. Lu Ruoxi's heart hurt so much that it was difficult to breathe, but she still desperately wanted to surface. She struggled and said, Marquis, I can learn anything. The corner of Ning Chen's mouth curved into an indifferent arc, no need, this Marquis can't wait. Ning Chen's words ruthlessly shattered Lu Ruoxi's last hope. The cruelest thing in the world was to give someone hope and then mercilessly shatter it. Lu Ruoxi staggered, almost unable to stand steadily. Her beautiful face had completely lost its color. Chapter 144. Ning Chen's ruthlessness made Lu Ruoxi completely despair. When a chess piece had no value, who would care whether it was gold or silver? Xia Mingri watched quietly without saying anything. It was a pity that this chess piece was lost. However, the target was the Marquis. If he was so easy to win over, he would be suspicious. The biggest variable in the imperial city was the Marquis in front of him. There was still a gap between his power and the third prince's, so winning over the Marquis was the most effective way. 10th Prince, you didn't ask me to come here for such a trivial matter. If you have something to say, just say it. Ning Chen picked up his wine cup and asked calmly. Xia Mingri didn't beat around the bush and said bluntly, Marquis, I need your help. Why? Ning Chen said lightly. The Marquis always has to choose between me and third brother. In the current situation, third brother does have a slight advantage. However, with your intelligence, you should be able to distinguish the difference between icing on the cake and sending charcoal in the snow. Xia Mingri said seriously. Ning Chen took a sip of wine. When the wine entered his throat, it was scorching hot and intoxicating. 10th Prince, you only said half of it. The other half is that choosing you means I have to bear a greater risk of failure than choosing the third prince. Presumably, you should also know the consequences of failure. Why should I take this risk? Since ancient times, wealth comes from danger. The Marquis is already a martial Marquis. The next step is to become the head of the generals. However, with third brother's relationship with Jingwu Duke, I'm afraid this position will not be given to anyone. In other words, if the Marquis chooses third brother, the best result is to keep his position. Xia Mingri said seriously. Ning Chen was silent and didn't answer. He showed a thoughtful expression. The Marquis should think about it carefully. The difference in strength between me and third brother is not insurmountable. Moreover, I don't know if the Marquis is aware that third brother has begun to secretly contact Northern Mang. Xia Mingri pretended to inadvertently reveal the truth. Ning Chen was startled and a touch of anger flashed across his face. Is this true? It's true. Xia Mingri nodded. His Highness, let me think about it. I will give you an answer in 3 days. Ning Chen stood up, glanced at Lu Ruoxi who seemed to have lost her soul, and turned around to leave. However, at this moment, something unexpected happened. A streak of light appeared out of nowhere on one of the surrounding boats, piercing through the wooden planks of the cabin and stabbing towards the 10th prince. It was too late for Ning Chen to make a move. At this critical moment, Xia Mingri subconsciously fell back and narrowly avoided the fatal sword. At this moment, Ning Chen finally reacted. His face was cold and murderous. 10th Prince, step back. Ning Chen's body flashed, and he appeared in front of the ghost-faced assassin. Xia Mingri didn't hesitate and immediately retreated to the other side of the boat. Seeing this, the demon-faced assassin stomped his foot and charged forward. Ning Chen pointed his finger and Ning Shuang also rushed forward to fight with the assassin. Amidst the frost, the red light was dazzling. The assassin's strength was much stronger than expected. Even someone as strong as Ning Chen couldn't win in a short time. The light in Xia Mingri's eyes rapidly jumped. He was wondering who wanted to kill him. Could it be that the third prince was already so impatient? Bang! Suddenly, another sword light came from another flower boat. It was just as swift and fierce as before, causing people to be alarmed. Xia Mingri dodged again. However, he saw blood blooming brilliantly. It was so beautiful that it pierced his heart. Xia Mingri forgot that beside him was Lu Ruoxi. He could dodge, but Lu Ruoxi couldn't. The beautiful figure lightly fell down. Her hair scattered, and her peerless face carried a trace of relief. Perhaps, this was the best result for her. It's you who are courting death. Ning Chen's face turned cold. He flipped his palm and gathered his chi. All of a sudden, blue waves roared out. The cabin was shattered, and half of the Yin River started to shake. The waves rolled and gathered. Waves shocking heaven and earth unite. The supreme martial arts of the Zhangsun family appeared in the world. Monstrous waves crazily roared, each wave higher than the last. The whole world turned into water. In the Ling Yan pavilion, Su Fei Yan's pupils constricted. What a terrifying martial Marquis! At the same time, all the spies' expressions changed. The Marquis Ji Ming had actually become so strong. The two assassins didn't say anything and hurriedly retreated. However, it was already too late. Bang! Bang! The two assassins were dyed red and flew out. Blood sprayed out and sprinkled 10 meters away. Let's go. The two spat out a mouthful of blood. They immediately stepped on the water and flew away. Ning Chen didn't chase them. Instead, he went to Xia Mingri and asked, "10th Prince, are you alright?" "I'm fine. Thank you for saving me," Xia Mingri solemnly said. "It's what I should do," Ning Chen politely said. The next moment, Xia Mingri squatted down and checked Lu Ruoxi's breath. He sighed softly and said, "She's hopeless." At this time, the few guards who were secretly protecting the 10th Prince's safety also got on the boat. They all knelt down and said in fear, "This subordinate came too late and frightened your highness. It's not your fault." "Get up," Xia Mingri said. "Thank you, your highness." The guards stood up and immediately stood aside. "Since the 10th Prince is fine, this subordinate will take his leave." Ning Chen cupped his fists and walked away. "Your highness, what should we do with this woman?" After Ning Chen left, a guard looked at Lu Ruoxi in a pool of blood and asked. "Find a place to bury her," Xia Mingri lightly said. Yes, the guard accepted the order and wrapped Lu Ruoxi in a blanket. He then carried her off the boat. After dealing with these trivial matters, Xia Mingri walked to the bow of the boat and looked at the 3rd Prince's mansion in the distance. He couldn't figure out why Xia Yanwu was so anxious. According to reason, he should be the one who was anxious. At the Jiming Marquis mansion, Kang Yu walked over. When he saw Ning Chen, he knelt down and said, "Greetings, Minister." Kang Yu's face was still filled with fear. At the last moment, he thought he wouldn't be able to come back alive. "You did well. Get up," Ning Chen calmly said. "Thank you, Minister." Kang Yu stood up and stood aside. "Wu Go chose to take you. It seems he trusts you very much. I hope you won't let this Marquis down," Ning Chen indifferently said. "This subordinate doesn't dare." Feeling the coldness in Ning Chen's words, Kang Yu broke out in a cold sweat. After the battle just now, he finally understood how terrifying their lord was. No one would be able to understand that kind of terrifying power unless they experienced it themselves. Just now, if their minister hadn't secretly held back, he and Yin Wugo really wouldn't have been able to come back. "Okay, you can leave," Ning Chen said. "Yes." Kang Yu respectfully bowed and quickly left. Half a day later, Ning Chen was ordered to enter the palace and meet with Zhang Sunday. The two talked for nearly 3 hours. By the time he returned to the mansion, the sky was already completely dark. Yin Wugo was already waiting in the backyard of the mansion, his red robes fluttering in the wind. "Where is she?" Ning Chen asked. "In the room," Yin Wugo calmly said. Ning Chen opened the door and saw the beautiful figure lying on the bed. Her face was pale and bloodless. "When will the medicine's effect wear off?" Ning Chen turned his head and asked. "Tonight," Yin Wugo replied. Ning Chen stepped forward and took Lu Ruoxi's pulse. It was still extremely weak and almost undetectable. "Minister, if there's nothing else, this subordinate will take his leave," Yin Wugo said. "Look after Kang Yu." "I don't want any accidents," Ning Chen lightly said. "I believe in him," Yin Wugo sternly said. "I hope so." "You can leave," Ning Chen waved his hand. "Yes." Yin Wugo bowed again and quickly disappeared into the night with his blood sword. "Bad guy? Who is he?" After Yin Wugo left, Mingyu walked into the room and curiously asked. "He's from the imperial court," Ning Chen casually replied. Mingyu walked forward, and after seeing the beautiful figure on the bed, a trace of surprise flashed across her small face. Isn't this that Huakue? Did you really buy her? I didn't buy her. I dug her out, Ningchen honestly said. Mingyu was stunned. She didn't understand and was about to ask when she suddenly noticed that Lu Ruoxi's state was somewhat strange. She couldn't help but worry. What's wrong with her? She's injured. It's a long story. I'll tell you later, Ning Chen replied as he poured true qi into Lu Ruoxi. Oh. Mingyu nodded and immediately stood by the bed obediently, quietly watching. After pouring true qi, Ning Chen and little Mingyu waited on the side. There was still more than an hour left, so they had to wait. Fortunately, with little Mingyu by his side, he didn't feel bored. Ning Chen explained the matter in detail without holding anything back. The people who assassinated the 10th prince were Kong Yu and Yin Wugo. This was something he had arranged in advance. As for Lu Ruoxi, it wasn't part of the plan at first. It was a temporary decision he made after boarding the ship. He had sent a message to Yin Wugo and arranged a follow-up plan so that he could take the opportunity to rescue Lu Ruoxi. The imperial court had many drugs that could make people fake their deaths. Yin Wugo's sword was also very accurate. The heart was half an inch to the right. This was his experience in killing people. Due to the limitations of the 10th prince's identity, he was destined to be unable to distinguish it. Through today's assassination, Ning Chen had a clearer understanding of the 10th prince of the Great Xia. There was no doubt that the 10th prince had always been hiding his strength. In this world, there weren't many people who could continuously avoid being assassinated by Kong Yu and Yin Wugo. The fact that the 10th prince was able to do it was indeed somewhat unexpected. Thinking about it carefully, Ning Chen felt that something was very wrong. Now was the critical period for the fight for the throne. The 10th prince had no need to hide his personal strength. Unless he reached the Xiantian realm, personal strength couldn't be a decisive factor in the fight for the throne. Moreover, the 10th prince wanted to rope in various influential people. It would be more advantageous for him to show more strength. There must be a demon behind this abnormality. The 10th prince's actions didn't seem like he was deliberately hiding his strength, but more like he was guarding against someone. This person was definitely not him. The 10th prince had been hiding for a long time. He had only become a martial marquis not long ago. It seemed that the waters of the imperial city were much deeper than he had imagined. There were still many things he hadn't noticed yet. Ugh! At this moment, a painful groan came from the bed. Lu Ruoxi slowly opened her eyes. Her beautiful face was blank. The next moment, a calm voice sounded in her ears. This Marquis has given you a place to stay. Chapter 145. For the next 2 days, Lu Ruoxi recuperated in the Marquis mansion. Although Yin Wugo's sword had avoided her heart, a woman's body was still weak. This time, she had lost so much blood that she needed to recuperate more carefully. For this reason, Ning Chen specially invited the shopkeeper of Duan Pharmacy to come over. The shopkeeper was a direct descendant of Zhang Sun's bloodline and was absolutely trustworthy. Moreover, Ning Chen's relationship with the shopkeeper was quite good. At least, that was what Ning Chen thought. Young Marquis Ning, the medicine fee this time is 350 taels. Plus the 730 taels you owed last time, that's a total of 1080 taels. When are you going to pay it back? The shopkeeper asked indifferently. Cough, cough. Ning Chen almost choked on his tea. How could he owe so much? Shopkeeper, please have some tea. Ning Chen hurriedly poured a cup of tea and brought it over. The shopkeeper was not polite. He took the tea and drank it in one gulp before continuing, pay it back. Cough, cough. Talking about money hurts feelings. I'll go ask someone to prepare dinner. We'll eat here tonight. After saying that, Ning Chen ran away and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. On the bed, Lu Ruoxi was dumbfounded. This was the first time she had seen this side of the Marquis. It was completely different from his previous cold and ruthless appearance. The shopkeeper packed up the medicine box while saying, "Miss Lu, don't believe the rumors outside and don't be confused by superficial things. Your Marquis is a trustworthy person. Of course, the premise is that you have to obtain his approval." After saying that, the shopkeeper picked up the medicine box and turned to leave. "Tell Ning Chen that I'm leaving. I remember the debt. Tell him to pay it back quickly. As a dignified Marquis of the Grand Xia dynasty, he can't even take out this much money. Isn't he ashamed?" After he finished speaking, the shopkeeper left, leaving Lu Ruoxi alone in the room in a daze. Half an hour later, a pretty maid came over with a pot of decocted medicine. She carefully helped Lu Ruoxi up and helped her drink the medicine. "Thank you." Lu Ruoxi softly thanked her. "You're welcome. The Marquis asked me to come over." The maid smiled faintly and replied. After a moment of silence, Lu Ruoxi finally couldn't help but ask, "What kind of person is the knowing destiny Marquis?" The maidservant blew on the medicine in the spoon and brought it to the former's mouth, whispering, "Master Ho is a good man. You will understand after a long time. When Her Majesty sent me here, I was also very scared. Master Ho's reputation outside is indeed a bit scary. However, after getting to know him, I found that Master Ho is actually very easy to get along with. He never gets angry, nor does he make things difficult for the servants. If we have to talk about his shortcomings, it is that he is a little poor." At this point, the maidservant couldn't help but laugh and continued, "Our Marquis' estate is different from other places. I heard that the expenses of the estate are all personally transferred from the imperial household by the Empress. The Marquis himself doesn't have any money at all." After feeding him a bowl of medicine, the maidservant stood up and said with a smile, "Well, I'll go out first. It's late. I have to boil the bath water for our young master. Compared with Master Ho, our young master is more difficult to serve." After the maid left, Lu Ruoxi leaned against the headboard and quietly thought about the conversation between the shopkeeper and the maid. Perhaps she really didn't understand this Xi Ming Marquis who saved her. After dinner, the estate gradually quieted down. The servants had worked hard all day and had gone back to rest. "Bad person, I don't want to drink medicine, it's too bitter." Inside the room, little Ming Yu was throwing a tantrum. She had caught a cold in the past 2 days. It wasn't serious, but she was always coughing. "No, come here quickly." Ning Chen naturally couldn't agree and chased her around the room with the medicine. This little ancestor ran quite fast. "I don't want to." Little Ming Yu opened the door and ran out, escaping from the devil's grasp. "Xiao Yun, help me stop her." Ning Chen hurriedly shouted when he saw the maidservant coming over. "Okay." The maidservant saw this and immediately went to stop her. Unfortunately, little Ming Yu was already prepared. She bypassed the maidservant and disappeared without a trace. Usually, the servants couldn't enter the backyard and only the maidservant was allowed to enter. Once little Ming Yu ran, no one could catch up. Ning Chen was still carrying the medicine, so it was very inconvenient for him to chase after her. After returning to the room, he put down the medicine and asked the maidservant to help block the way. The two of them cooperated and finally forced little Ming Yu to a corner of the courtyard. Seeing that there was nowhere to run, Ming Yu's big eyes rolled around and she ran into Lu Ruoxi's room. Clang! When the door was closed, Ming Yu ran to the bed, took off her shoes, and got under the quilt without saying a word. Lu Ruoxi was startled and didn't know what was going on. Ning Chen and the maidservant pushed the door open and saw the bulging quilt. They knew Ming Yu was hiding inside. "Ming Yu, I saw you. Come out quickly," Ning Chen said. "No." Ming Yu poked her small head out and shook it vigorously. "I'm going to catch you," Ning Chen threatened. "Come on." Ming Yu wasn't afraid at all. She wrinkled her small nose and provoked him. Ning Chen didn't know what to do. Men and women shouldn't touch each other. In this era, the distance between men and women was too serious. He couldn't go up and lift Lu Ruoxi's quilt. Xiao Yun, you go. Ning Chen turned his head and said. The maidservant nodded helplessly. It seemed that she was the only one who could do it. When Ming Yu saw that the situation was not right, she lifted the quilt and jumped out of the bed. Half of the snow-white mountain range came into view. It was so white and dazzling that it made people dazzled. Ah! Lu Ruoxi cried out and hurriedly covered herself with the quilt to block the exposed spring scenery. Ning Chen subconsciously turned around and smiled bitterly in his heart. This was a big joke. Ming Yu touched her nose and felt a little guilty. She looked at Lu Ruoxi on the bed and comforted her, it's okay. If the bad guy doesn't want you, I'll marry you when I grow up. Lu Ruoxi was embarrassed and didn't know what to say. The maidservant quickly went forward and pulled Ming Yu over. Little ancestor, quickly go back and drink your medicine. Miss Lu can't wait for you. Ning Chen went out and waited in the courtyard. When he saw little Ming Yu come out, he deliberately put on a stern face. Ming Yu came up and tugged at the bad guy's clothes. She cautiously asked, are you angry? I'll drink my medicine obediently and won't run anymore. Ming Yu continued. Don't be angry. Ming Yu hugged the bad guy's arm and shook it vigorously. Ning Chen was dizzy from the shaking and reached out to knock the little girl's forehead. He helplessly said, just this once. Let's go back and drink your medicine. Hee hee. Ming Yu laughed happily and grabbed the bad guy's big hand with both hands. The medicine was still on the table. It was warm and just right to drink. Ming Yu wrinkled her little nose and drank the medicine in one gulp. Ning Chen immediately handed over a pastry and fed it to the little girl. It's so bitter. Ming Yu said unhappily. Good medicine is bitter. If you don't drink your medicine, you'll get sick. Ning Chen patiently comforted her. Marquis, the hot water for the little young master is ready. The maidservant came in and whispered. And, you should also go back and rest. Ning Chen said. Xiao Yun had to take care of 2 patients a day and was very tired. Moreover, little Ming Yu wasn't a master that could be served by ordinary people. This servant will take her leave. The maidservant bowed and walked away. Go take a bath and quickly go to sleep. Ning Chen patted the little girl's head and prepared to go back to his room. I want to sleep with you. Ming Yu grabbed the bad guy's arm and said pitifully. Ning Chen helplessly struggled and said, how old are you? Why do you still need someone to sleep with you? Listen to me and quickly go to sleep. I won't. Ming Yu refused to let go. Ning Chen reasoned for a long time, but little Ming Yu was still unmoved. He had no choice but to nod and agree. Little Ming Yu had been unusually willful these past 2 days. Whenever a little girl was sick, she would throw a tantrum. Go take a bath first. Okay. Ming Yu let go of his hand and ran behind the screen to take off her clothes and take a bath. Ning Chen opened the door and went to Lu Ruoxi's room. The latter was already asleep. Her beautiful face was slightly sickly pale, which made her look even more lovely. Ning Chen focused his finger and gently touched Lu Ruoxi's chest. A clear stream of true qi poured into her body and helped her recover. After a quarter of an hour, Ning Chen stopped and immediately turned around to leave. After the door closed, Lu Ruoxi opened her eyes and her tense body slowly relaxed. It turned out that he only wanted to heal her. Ning Chen returned to his room, and just as he was reading a book, little Ming Yu ran over in her pajamas. Go to sleep, Ming Yu said tenderly. Ning Chen could only put down the book in his hand. Coaxing this little ancestor to sleep was the most important thing right now. I want to listen to a story, Ming Yu said coquettishly as she leaned against the bad guy's chest. Ning Chen wiped the little girl's hair with a towel and asked, what story do you want to hear? Snow White, Ming Yu said after thinking for a while. Didn't I tell you already? Why don't you change it? Ning Qin suggested. I want to hear it, Mingyu said unwillingly as she twisted her body. Okay, Ning Qin agreed. He couldn't afford to provoke a sick little girl, so he could only comply. In a faraway country, there lived a king and a queen. They longed for a child, however, good times didn't last long. Snow White's mother fell ill and passed away. The king married a new queen. The story wasn't short. Ning Qin told it with great care. Little Mingyu fell asleep as she listened. A peaceful smile hung on her delicate and beautiful face. She looked extremely cute. Ning Qin carefully laid the little girl down and covered her with a quilt. Soon after, he quietly left the room. Marquis. A black-clothed figure appeared out of thin air and knelt down. How's the investigation? Ning Qin asked indifferently. Grand Guardian and Duke Jingwu haven't found anything out of the ordinary for the time being. However, Duke Shiyu did leave the Imperial City a few days ago. Moreover, Duke Shiyu's disciple Yin Ma Xiao has close ties with Peerless City. His intentions are unclear, the black-clothed figure said respectfully. Ning Qin nodded and said, continue to keep an eye on them. Report back immediately if there's any movement. Yes, the black-clothed figure accepted the order and quickly disappeared. After the scout left, Ning Qin stood quietly in the courtyard and looked into the distance. His eyes narrowed slightly. There was indeed something wrong with Duke Shiyu. He just didn't know if Grand Guardian and Duke Jingwu knew about this. The situation in Great Xia was already chaotic enough. If something happened to the three dukes, the situation would really be difficult to control. However, what worried him the most was Fan Lingyue. What kind of role did this woman play in this? In this world, no one understood this woman better than him. It was because he understood her that he was so afraid of her. Chapter 146. In the northern Meng camp, a constant stream of information came from the Imperial City. The hidden chess pieces that Fan Lingyue had set up over the past 7 years were all working at this moment. In the commander's tent, every day there were orders that were quickly sent to the Imperial City through eagles. The spies in Ning Chen's hands were also constantly monitoring every corner of the Imperial City, reporting everything that they discovered, not missing a single detail. The Imperial City was so big that there were countless nobles that needed to be paid attention to. There were also many shocking situations. Every day, Ning Chen was quickly filtering through the huge amount of information, judging what was useful and what was useless. When the 3-day deadline came, Ning Chen sent a letter to the 10th prince, promising that he would help him ascend the throne. Both of them understood that this was just an attitude, but a kind attitude was always the starting point of cooperation. Ning Chen was very clear that before long, the contents of these letters would spread throughout the Imperial City. With the 10th prince's intelligence, he definitely wouldn't let go of this opportunity to strengthen his own reputation. Moreover, the 3rd prince would soon find him again. This was a world that valued strength after all. Even the 3 dukes and the eldest grandson couldn't recommend a prince with no power to ascend the throne. 2 days later, the contents of the letter were made public. The Imperial City was shaken. Everyone was shocked by Ning Chen's choice. Everyone knew that Marquis Jiming was the most trusted person of the current empress. For him to make this choice, did it mean that the empress had already decided to make the 10th prince the emperor? The 3rd prince was the most surprised person. That day, he and Ning Chen could still be considered to have a pleasant conversation. He didn't expect things to change so quickly. Men, prepare the horse. In the Divine Wind camp, Xia Yanwu's expression was grave. Yes. The horse was quickly brought over. Xia Yanwu quickly rode out of the Divine Wind camp, rushing in the direction of Jiming Marquis Manor. Jiming Marquis Manor. When Xia Yanwu arrived, the old steward was already waiting in front of the manor. When he saw the former, he directly said, "The Marquis left this morning. 3rd prince, please come back another day." Xia Yanwu frowned. He waited for a long time before replying. When Jiming Marquis comes back, tell him that I have something to discuss with him. The old steward respectfully bowed and said, this servant will definitely pass on the message. Xia Yanwu left with confusion and doubt, as well as a trace of anger. In the Cloud Ridge village more than 700 li outside of the imperial city, a figure slowly walked over. Ning Chen left the city to avoid the third prince and suppress the bandits. The Cloud Ridge stronghold was located on the Cloud Ridge and was the biggest source of bandits in the surrounding area. The terrain was strategic and easy to defend, but difficult to attack. There were more than 4,000 bandits in the stronghold, and there were many experts. The imperial court had tried many times to wipe them out, but to no avail. The imperial guards of Great Xia normally did not leave the imperial city, much less be used to suppress bandits. As for the surrounding city guards, they did not have much of an advantage against these bandits. Ning Chen had never believed that there were mountain bandits that could go against the imperial court. The reason they hadn't been exterminated was definitely because of human factors. He sent people to investigate for a long time and found that there were level 9 experts on the mountain, and there was more than one. This place was too close to the imperial city. With such a group of people here, he was very worried. He did not care who had planted this hidden chess piece. Since he had found it, he would not let it continue to exist. The village was very lively. Ning Chen stood on a rock and watched quietly. Some people passed by from afar, but no one took him seriously. According to the spy's report, there were 3 fort masters in the stronghold, 2 men and 1 woman. All of them were at level 9. Their leader, the big creditor, had even reached the later stage of level 9. What surprised him even more was that the only female fort master was the head fort master. There were very few level 9 experts in the world. This could be seen from the Imperial Guards of Great Xia. The Imperial Guards of Great Xia had always been a gathering place for experts. However, even so, out of 10,000 Imperial Guards, there would not be one level 9 expert on average. Again, level 9 experts were not cabbages. For a small village to have 3 level 9 experts, even an idiot would know that something was wrong. Sir. A woman dressed as a bandit walked over and bowed respectfully. You did well. Ning Chen nodded and praised her. Thank you for your praise. The woman lowered her head. Get up. After tonight, you can leave the mountain. Ning Chen glanced at the village in front of him and said. The woman thanked him. After she got up, she hesitated for a moment and could not help but ask, Sir, how many people did you bring? Just myself. Ning Chen smiled calmly and said, It's just suppressing bandits. There's no need to make such a big fuss. The woman looked worried. Just as she was about to persuade him, Ning Chen stopped her. That's enough. You can go back. I know what I'm doing. Yes. The woman bowed helplessly and sighed in her heart. She did not know if Sir was too confident or arrogant. How could one person defeat more than 4,000 people in the village? Ning Chen did not explain. There was no need to. He had never planned on foolishly charging in alone. Yunling was such a good terrain. It would be a waste not to take advantage of it. On the plains, facing 4,000 bandits with many experts might have been a bit difficult. However, this was a mountain ridge. Horses could not run and people could not surround him. He had all the time in the world to kill them one by one. As the sun set in the west, Ning Chen stood on a huge rock and waited for the sky to turn dark. The reason was simple. It was inconvenient to leave the mountain at night. He could not kill too quickly by himself. Of course, he did not want anyone to escape. Night did not have much effect on experts above level 9. However, not everyone on the mountain was level 9. The worry on the woman's face did not disappear. She had thought that Sir would bring the green-robed guards or even the red-robed guards. She did not expect that in the end, only Sir would come. Night gradually fell. A light wind blew. As expected, it was from the east. Ning Chen stood against the wind. He pulled up a bundle of arrows from under the huge rock. He bent the bow of death and fired 3 arrows at the same time. His relaxed fingers brought out 3 beams of deadly light in the dark night. They silently streaked across the void and headed straight for the people patrolling the outermost perimeter. Pu, pu, pu. The 3 arrows sank into the throats of 3 people at the same time. There were no screams or cries of pain. Silently, the arrows pierced their throats. Blood sprayed everywhere. Ning Chen's hands were fast. He bent the bow and knocked the arrows. Unchanging, the black beams of light appeared one after another. There was no light or sound. There were only figures falling continuously. More and more figures fell. Finally, someone felt that something was wrong. Just as he was about to go out to check, a black arrow directly pierced his throat. The blood that sprayed out dyed the ground red. All that was left was a pair of eyes that could not be closed and a sense of unwillingness. The smell of blood drifted away with the wind. The people in the stronghold did not notice anything. The dark night was the best time to cover up a massacre. Ning Chen purposely chose the dark night and the position against the wind so that he would not let anyone go. This was a naked massacre. There was no resistance. The figure on the huge rock under the night did not show any mercy from the beginning to the end. His pair of cold eyes made people unable to see any emotions. Death became the only outcome. The stronghold was huge, but it could not escape the pair of emotionless eyes from afar. Wherever the eyes could see, the light of the arrows would arrive in an instant. Killing people was a boring thing. Killing 1 person, 2 people, 10 people, 100 people. After killing too many people, it was just a repetition. However, Ning Chen had already decided to kill everyone. Therefore, he was still very careful when he was killing people. 3 arrows were shot at the same time. 4 arrows were shot at the same time. 5 arrows were his limit. Any more and he would not be able to control his accuracy. Fortunately, his speed of drawing the bow was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he drew the bow twice in a row. The people who wanted to shout had their throats pierced by the light of the arrows in the end. 5 people covered their throats together. The scene of blood spraying out was very exciting and also very cruel. After killing the outermost people, the target continued to move forward. Ning Chen would let go of groups of more than 10 people. If there were more than 10 people, he would have to draw the bow for the 3rd time. This gap was enough for the remaining people to shout. On the huge rock, the number of arrows that were like a small hill decreased rapidly. It was less than half of the initial number. This meant that half of the people in the stronghold had died. Ning Chen brought enough arrows. He brought as many arrows as there were people in the stronghold. He knew that he could not shoot everyone to death like this. However, what if he was lucky? It was always good to bring more arrows. However, it turned out that this lucky chance didn't appear. A woman who was about to go out to splash water saw her husband who had just fallen and screamed. Although this woman was also nailed to the wooden house by an arrow that came later, she was also nailed to death. The woman's cry was very loud. It immediately startled many people. They all ran out to check, only to find that the outside was full of corpses. Ning Chen's arrows could only kill 5 people at a time. Taking into account the reaction time, he shot twice, which was 10 people. This should have been enough because it was very rare for 10 people to appear in everyone's field of vision at night. However, the woman's cry changed everything. Many people ran out, no less than 20. The matter was finally exposed. Ning Chen still calmly sent these 20 people to the Western Paradise. If they were exposed, then so be it. Before the people who could stop him arrived, he would kill as many as he could. Stronghold Master. In the stronghold, frightened voices rang out one after another. In the distance, in an extremely luxurious wooden house, 3 pairs of eyes suddenly opened. Huamu, go out and take a look. In the middle of the 3 seats, a beautiful woman who looked to be around 30 years old narrowed her eyes and said, Okay. The leftmost middle-aged man stood up and walked out of the wooden house. On a huge rock in the distance, Ning Chen's hand stopped knocking an arrow and threw it to the side. The main character had finally appeared. The corner of Ning Chen's mouth curled up slightly. A silver arrow appeared. Suddenly, a fierce wind blew. The light in the sky gathered crazily, condensing into an unparalleled arrow. In the next moment, the arrow shot out, passing through the restrictions of space. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of the man in the middle. With a boom, it pierced through his body, bringing with it a spray of blood. How is this possible? Looking at the huge hole in his chest, the man in the middle struggled to move his gaze in the direction of the arrow. His blurry eyes could no longer see the figure in the distance. All he could see was the indifferent figure in plain clothes, like an azura in the night. The first arrow. Ning Chen counted softly. This arrow was not the arrow below him. He could not shoot too many arrows, otherwise he would die of exhaustion. Chapter 147. 1 arrow for 1 chieftain. It seemed to be a good deal. However, Ning Chen knew clearly that this could only happen once. Not to mention that this middle-aged man was the weakest of the 3 fort masters, the other 2 were not fools either. They would definitely be concerned about what was happening outside. Experts of level 7 and above all had very strong perceptive abilities. The arrow just now could not be hidden from them. A moment later, 4 level 8 powerhouses rushed out of the wooden hall. They were erratic and rushed toward the giant rock. Dark clouds covered the moon. The night wind was getting stronger and stronger. This was a sign of rain. Heaven was not on their side. It made these people face an even more unfortunate abyss. Under the dark clouds, Ning Chen looked at the figures rushing toward him. The coldness in his eyes grew. He drew the bow. The silver arrow light gathered again. The wind swirled. The arrow light flashed. It was the beginning of another massacre. These people could not be killed by the arrows below them. The 2 chieftains in the wooden hall asked these 4 people to come out. Their purpose was obvious. They came out to die. He could shoot 7 arrows now. He just used 1 arrow just now. Second arrow. With the power of heaven, one of them was dyed red. He was sent 3 feet away by the arrow light. Blood filled the air. Third arrow. Fourth arrow. Fifth arrow. 3 arrows flew out. They were all dyed red. The red color filled the sky. It was extremely beautiful. After the level 8, 5 level 7 appeared together. They also came to die. The 2 chieftains hiding in the wooden hall did not dare to show their faces. They restrained their breath and completely hid themselves from the horrible arrow light. They knew that this kind of arrow light must consume a lot of energy. There must be a limit. Otherwise, there would be no need to fight today. Ning Chen put away the broken death bow. His figure flashed and disappeared from the giant rock. Since they did not come out, he would go to find them. In a flash, the 5 level 7 experts were beheaded by a silver sword light before they could see the person's face clearly. Blood gushed into the sky and dyed the sky red. In the wooden hall, the young woman in purple and the old man in green looked very serious. They still did not know who the enemy was. They also did not receive any news from the imperial city. At this moment, outside the wooden hall, a white figure walked slowly. Although he was young, there was a strong pressure coming from him. Marquis Jiming. The young woman in purple cried out. Oh. Looks like you recognize me. If that's the case, then my guess was right. Ning Chen looked at the 2 people in front of him. Many people in the world knew his name, but not many really knew him. Most of the time, he was not in the imperial city. Even when he was in the imperial palace, he was locked up in the Weiyang Palace by Zhang Sun. The people who had seen him were actually the powerful officials in the imperial court. This young woman had obviously seen him before. Otherwise, it would be unreliable for her to recognize him with just a portrait. After all, a portrait was not a photo from the future. The purple-clothed young woman also realized that she had misspoken. However, a person's reputation was like the shadow of a tree. Although the knowing destiny Marquis had just been conferred the title of Marquis, his notoriety was frightening. Tens of thousands of Buddhists in the Buddhist kingdom were killed overnight. Even the Buddhas in the human world were nailed to Buddha Mountain and tortured day and night by the flames of resentment. Among the 10 marquises of Xia, the person in front of her was the most frightening. Marquis Jiming, you and I have no enmity between us. Why do you have to be so aggressive? The purple-clothed young woman said in a low voice. Your existence is a mistake. If I didn't come, I wouldn't have known that there were so many masters hidden in the small Yunling village. You really surprised me. While speaking, Ning Chen glanced at the figures hidden in the dark of the wooden hall. A cold smile appeared on his face. There were also level 8 and level 9 masters. It seemed that he had hit the jackpot. Marquis Jiming, if you leave now, we can pretend that nothing happened. Otherwise, don't blame us for bullying you with numbers. The purple-clothed young woman waved her hand and the figures in the dark walked out one by one. She immediately showed her weakness and threatened. She did not want to be enemies with the Marquis Jiming in front of her. Even if the Yunling village could keep him here, there would be great hidden dangers. Once the Empress of the Weiyang Palace was angry, even 10 Yunling villages would not be enough. Bullying me with numbers? I hope you can do it. With that, Ning Chen took a step forward. Immediately, the ground 10 feet away collapsed. The entire wooden hall shook and quickly collapsed. Take him down. Kill him. The purple-clothed young woman's expression changed and she said angrily. 4 level 7, 2 level 8, and 1 level 9 all rushed forward. They turned their palms and swung their swords at the newcomer. Clang! When the sword and finger met, the level 9 master's body stopped. The sword in his hand could not move an inch forward. At the same time, the sky was filled with frost. The 6 level 7 and level 8 masters were all stopped. They were directly blown away by the oncoming genuine qi. 2 fingers broke the sword and 1 palm forced the enemy back. The level 9 master was blown away. He spat out blood and his hair was dyed red. In this world, there was a huge difference between level 9 masters. In the past, Ning Chen had seen the invincible stance of the god's child on the way to the bride's wedding. That was the strongest person he had seen when he first entered the martial path. At that time, he could only secretly look up at the strongest person under the Xiantian stage. Now, their roles had changed. The once weak Ning Chen had become an insurmountable mountain in the eyes of this group of people. They were both level 9 masters, but he was so unattainable. Let's go together. The purple-clothed young woman did not dare delay any longer. She gave the order and charged forward with the old man beside her. 3 level 9 masters, 2 level 8 masters, and 4 level 7 masters joined hands. Their powerful might shook the world and sealed off all directions. Boom! Thunder rolled. This was the first thunder to welcome the beginning of summer. Tonight, it was the most beautiful song to accompany this battle of survival and slaughter. The purple-clothed young woman was already at the late level 9 realm. The old man was also at the peak of the mid-level 9 realm. With the addition of an early level 9 master, the 3 of them could even fight a peak level 9 master. The temperature around Ning Chen was getting lower and lower. His sword fingers flashed, bringing out a waterfall of cold snow. The purple-clothed young woman bore the brunt and faced the most powerful pressure. The sonorous sound of the sword was the collision of the long sword and the sword fingers. On the other side, the old man's powerful palm strength also aroused Ning Chen's fighting spirit. He turned his left hand over and the sky was full of waves. Palm to palm, sword to sword, it was a collision of moves, but more importantly, a competition of foundation. The three of them wanted to exhaust Jiming Marquis by force, relying on their numbers. Unfortunately, they fell into the most difficult and bitter battle. The foundation built by the Life Scroll was unparalleled in the world. Together with the Earth Scroll, no one under the Xiantian stage could beat Ning Chen in a head-on battle. Of course, there was one exception, and that was Fan Lingyue. So far, Ning Chen had not found a way to crack the white light. The method that could remove one's genuine qi was too incredible and there was no flaw to be found. However, among the people present, no one was called Fan Lingyue. Therefore, they were fighting very hard. Only one of the 4 level 7 was left. One of the 2 level 8 was dead and the other was injured. In this battlefield, those below level 9 were fragile and vulnerable, like the warm ice after winter and spring, breaking at the touch. Outside the wooden hall, the woman in bandit clothes looked here and was shocked speechless. She only had a level 5 cultivation, but she could clearly see how powerful their chief was. These level 9 experts, who were usually superior in her eyes, were fighting so hard in front of their chief. Boom! There was another clap of thunder, followed by a heavy downpour. The torches used for illumination in the stronghold were immediately extinguished. An atmosphere of panic quickly spread through the stronghold. The boundless darkness and the corpses all over the ground made these bandits, who usually killed people like scything flax, tremble. The fear of the unknown was always the most terrible. It gave people too much imagination. The reason why people were afraid of ghosts was not because people had seen them, but because no one had seen them. Ning Chen had seen them, so he was not afraid. In the eyes of people, ghost girls belonged to the category of ghosts. However, Ning Chen was very clear that ghost girls were not only not scary, they were very likely to be very beautiful. The heavy rain caused the smell of blood to rise. It was somewhat choking. Those who were a little timid had already vomited. They had killed people before, but they had never seen so many corpses like today. There were corpses all over the ground. The rainwater had turned the ground into a bloody color. Boom! The shocking sound of thunder covered the sound of the battle in the wooden hall. The remaining 5 people were more and more shocked. The person in front of them was actually so unshakable. Step back. Suddenly, Ning Chen pushed away the 2 people in front of him with a palm. He swept out of the battle and said indifferently. The 5 people did not understand, but the woman in bandit clothes outside the door knew he was talking about her. She immediately retreated several dozen feet away. The next moment, the frost around Ning Chen retreated. Blue waves covered the sky and earth. The rain outside was attracted and gathered crazily. Suddenly, the waves shook the sky and the sea and sky became one. Fury of the 9 heavens void waves. With a flip of his palm, a divine waterfall fell from the sky. The heavenly might was like the Milky Way hanging upside down, shocking everyone present. The 5 people were not willing to sit and wait for death. They used their strongest moves together to resist the might of a martial Marquis. 5 different kinds of splendor bloomed in the dark night. They were so weak, showing the most powerless resistance under the wind and rain. Facing the strongest person under Xiantian, even if the 5 of them fought together, they were still unshakable. The wooden hall was completely razed to the ground in the shocking collision. Wood and stone flew everywhere, but they were all scattered. Pu. With a muffled groan, the 5 people all flew out. The ground was dyed red. The 2 weakest people fell to the ground, but they could no longer stand up. The 3 ninth ranks struggled at death's door in the rainy night. Their hearts gradually sank to the bottom of the valley. A plain white figure flashed by. 2 heads flew up. The only one left was the purple-clothed woman. This was a very beautiful woman. Unfortunately, Ning Chen had seen too many beautiful women. Every one of them was prettier than the one in front of him. He kept her, not because of her appearance, but because she was useful. His sword finger broke her chi. Her cultivation was instantly crippled by 70%. The purple-clothed woman groaned and fainted. Take her down the mountain. Ning Chen glanced at the woman in bandit clothes in the distance and calmly said. The woman in bandit clothes walked over and picked up the purple-clothed woman. After hesitating for a moment, she could not help but ask, "Won't the department head come with us?" "You go first. I'll go kill the rest of them." Ning Chen spoke. His words were understated. There were no fluctuations, but it made the woman in bandit clothes tremble. She felt her entire body turn cold. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.